Chapter 17:11. Tang 13. When Nye Tian saw the face clearly, he screamed inside. He was astounded. He never thought he would run into Tang 13 here. This was truly an unexpected reunion. In the forest, Tang 13 flew like the wind. He was running for his life. Someone's chasing him. Nye Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he blurred into motion. Bastard, you can't get away! Just then, an angry shout arose from within the forest. Multiple silhouettes dashed out like tigers and wolves, chasing after Tang 13 without giving up. These idiots still won't give up? Tang 13 frowned slightly and slowed down. The corner of his lips curled into a cold, murderous smile. Bastard, where can you run now? Many black-clothed figures rushed over and surrounded Tang 13. They all had murderous looks on their faces. The black-clothed figures all wore the same attire and their strengths were similar. They were all mid- or late-stage overgods. Clearly, they were competitors from the same subsidiary world. Bastard, you're dead. The leader was a burly man. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he walked towards Tang 13. Why are you doing this? We are strangers. Do you really have to fight to the death? Tang 13 frowned and his lips curled into a smile. He was not nervous at all. Instead, he was playful. Bastard, you can't blame us. You can only blame yourself. Who let you see something you shouldn't have? The burly man smiled coldly. Then, he looked at the person beside him and said coldly, "You San, kill this bastard." "With pleasure." The skinny man called Yu San snickered. He stepped forward and stared at Tang 13 with his sharp eyes. His eyes shone with a strange coldness. Just then, Nye Tian had arrived. He stood a few hundred meters away and watched. He did not plan on attacking immediately. He sensed Tang 13's strength. He was at the peak of the intermediate god realm. Among the competitors of the Jiu-Ing Forbidden Hunt, he was definitely at the bottom. However, Tang 13 had the ghost eye. This was a power that could not be suppressed by martial arts. Therefore, Nye Tian was not worried about him. Nye Tian guessed that Tang 13 must have entered the forbidden land of martialism from another subsidiary world. Thinking back, Nye Tian and Tang 13 hadn't seen each other for many years. To be able to see each other now was a pleasant surprise. Nye Tian originally thought that since he did not have many companions with him in this Jiu-Ing Forbidden Hunt, the only person he could completely trust was Rui Qianyu. Tang 13's appearance made him very happy. Maybe Tang Yuyu was here as well. Brat, if you know what's good for you, then settle it yourself, lest you dirty third master's hands. Yu San Air smiled coldly. He scanned Tang 13's body with his dark eyes. He wanted Tang 13 to commit suicide. You? Tang 13 smiled coldly. The look in her eyes was not fear, but disdain. You are seeking death. Feeling Tang 13's disdain, Yu San Air roared. He clenched his fist and threw a punch straight at Tang 13's face. Tang 13's eyes flickered. Then, he moved and easily dodged the punch. Yu San Air's punch missed and he couldn't help but freeze. He did not expect Tang 13 to be this fast. Not only was the ghost eye powerful, it also allowed Tang 13 to have extraordinary reflexes and speed. When Yu San Air threw a punch, Tang 13 already saw the trajectory of his punch. Therefore, he easily dodged it. Then, Yu San Air threw a few more punches. However, all of them missed. He could not even touch Tang 13. You bastard, if you are a man, then fight me face to face. Why do you keep dodging? Yu San Air frowned and shouted angrily. You idiot! You can't even touch me and you still dare to yell? Tang 13 softly smiled. His attitude was extremely provocative. Bastard! Yu San Air was infuriated. He shouted and stepped forward. He punched out with both fists, like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey. This time, Tang 13 didn't dodge. Instead, she stepped forward. Her eyes flashed and a black blade appeared in her hand. She stabbed forward and a murderous vibe filled the air. Watch out! The tall and sturdy man suddenly sensed something and yelled in fear. He was extremely nervous. However, it was too late. Yusan Air had already rushed forward. Bang! In the next moment, a muffled bang resounded, and Yusan was blasted flying and smashed heavily against a boulder. His entire body was shattered by a strange force, and he exploded into a cloud of blood. He died miserably on the spot, and he didn't even have the time to scream. Seeing this, the others all took a deep breath in and looked at Tang 13 in shock. Nie Tian watched from afar and the corner of his lips curled up. He thought to himself, Tang 13's ghost eye is getting more and more terrifying. She can create a blade of the ghost eye. How terrifying! He saw very clearly that the black blade in Tang 13's hand was created by the ghost eye. The moment the blade of the ghost eye touched Yusan Air, the ghost eye's power rushed into his body. Yusan Air's body couldn't handle the power and exploded. Bastard, what kind of power is this? The tall and sturdy man was stunned for a few seconds and finally realized what was happening. He growled in a low voice. Do you really need to know? Tang 13 snickered, coldness flashed in her eyes. Brothers, let's attack together and kill him. The tall and sturdy man's eyes flickered. Then, he let out an evil chi and shouted, signaling everyone to attack together. Okay. Everyone else responded in unison. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent. Die. The tall and sturdy man growled and made his move. He punched out and no one knew when, but a black glove appeared on his fist. It looked like it was made out of iron, but it was very flexible. Like a layer of iron sand, it wrapped around his fist. Tang 13 noticed the glove on her opponent's fist. Her eyes flashed and the blade of the ghost eye in her hand howled. A black ray of light shot out and headed towards the tall and sturdy man. Bang! The tall and sturdy man's fist landed and shattered the black ray of light. His giant fist slammed forward like a snake, sharp and deadly. Tang 13's reflexes were fast. Her body moved and she dodged the punch. However, her shoulder was hit by the punch and a gaping wound appeared on her shoulder. Blood gushed out incessantly. Tang 13 steadied herself and her eyes widened. She didn't think the tall and sturdy man's glove would be so strange. It was as if it had some resistance against inhibition spells and allowed him to use chi and spirit chi. Bastard, I am going to kill you! Seeing that Tang 13 was injured, the tall and sturdy man's lips curled up into a cold smile. His silhouette flashed and he threw another punch towards Tang 13. Hom! Just then, a shadow of a sword fell from midair. The force of the sword was not strong, but it was extremely sharp. The tall and sturdy man raised his head and punched. The shadow of the sword and the fist clashed in midair, creating a loud, muffled sound. Chapter 17:12. Inside the forest, the tall and sturdy man stared at the silver-haired man who suddenly appeared. His expression was one of fear. That sword attack just now wasn't very powerful, but it was extremely sharp and intimidating. The person who suddenly appeared was none other than Nie Tian. At this moment, Nie Tian didn't pay any attention to the burly man. Instead, he smiled at Tang 13 and said, Tang 13, long time no see. You are. Tang 13 froze. She turned around to look at Nie Tian. Her expression was one of shock. Her mouth was wide open, but she couldn't speak. What? You don't recognize me? Nie Tian faintly grinned. In one step, he arrived beside Tang 13. Nie Tian. Tang 13 opened her mouth in shock. Her voice was trembling. She didn't think that Nie Tian would show up here. Also, Nie Tian's facial features seemed to have changed. Though his facial features were the same, he was much more handsome than before. Tang 13, let's take care of these guys first. We can catch up later. Nie Tian faintly grinned. He glanced over to the tall and sturdy man and the others. His eyes were full of killer's intent. All right. Tang 13 nodded heavily. Her desire to fight intensified. You want to kill us? You two small shrimps? The tall and sturdy man was first a little startled. Then, he turned violent. He roared and extended his palm. In his palm there was a black object. The black object was very strange. From afar it looked like liquid. But if one looked closely they would see that it was actually very thin thread. Nie Tian's eyes froze. The glove that the tall and sturdy man was wearing was made out of these black threads. The black threads were very strange. If they were gathered together, they would look like a piece of black metal. Ice demon silk. Just at this moment, little Fat Cat's voice suddenly rang out, crying out in surprise. What is it? Nie Tian froze. He's never heard of ice demon silk and didn't know what it was. Nie Tian, this is good stuff. You must get it. The Fat Cat chuckled in excitement. 2 ants die. In the next moment, before Nie Tian could react, the burly man roared and directly punched out. A black fist shadow whizzed out and madly attacked Nie Tian. Nie Tian's face darkened. He was shocked that this burly man could actually resist the restriction of the martial path and use his essence force and spirit intent force. Nie Tian did not dare to be careless. He stabbed out with his sword, and a weak sword shadow appeared, blocking the incoming fist shadow. Nie Tian took a few steps back while a wisp of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were filled with doubt. The power of the burly man's punch was beyond his expectations, catching him off guard. The punch landed on the burly man's face. He didn't expect Nie Tian to be able to withstand his punch. Nie Tian steadied himself and calmed down. He saw that the burly man's body was covered by the ice demon silk, and his Yuan meridians and god head could be activated. What a strange ice demon silk! It can actually resist the restriction of the martial path. Nie Tian was shocked. The ice demon silk was like a protective armor that covered the burly man, allowing him to resist the suppression of the martial path restriction. On the other side, Tang 13 was also pushed back by the 3 men in black. She could barely defend herself. These people were all covered by the ice demon silk, which greatly increased their strength. Stinking brat, your strength is not bad, but it's a pity that you met the Bing family. The tall and sturdy man laughed coldly, and the ice devil silk around him actually became berserk. It actually spread out towards the space and grew crazily. Nie Tian frowned. The ice demon silk was much scarier than he had imagined. Cutting 8 desolations. Nie Tian roared and released the devil and god energy from his body. He swung his sword and the sword intent surged out. The sword wave rushed towards the burly man. The power of this sword was more than a few times stronger than the previous one. Nie Tian had only used 4 devil and god energies. He was still holding back his strength. Boom! The sword wave surged and pressed down fiercely. The burly man was forced to retreat continuously, and the violent ice demon silk around his body was restrained a lot. What a terrifying sword intent! The burly man stopped and looked at Nie Tian with fear in his eyes. Obviously, he didn't expect Nie Tian's sword intent to be so terrifying. Nie Tian frowned and looked surprised. The sword attack just now was extremely powerful, but it didn't hurt the burly man at all. It was enough to show how terrifying the ice demon silk was. What exactly is this ice fiend silk? It's actually able to block my sword strike. Nie Tian was puzzled, and he became even more interested in the ice fiend silk. Boy, I didn't want to use this move, but you forced me to. At this moment, the burly man laughed coldly. An extremely berserk aura leaked out from his laughter. Immediately after, the ice demon silk around his body became berserk again. Immediately after, an ice-cold aura spread out, and the surrounding space was actually frozen bit by bit. Nie Tian felt the cold aura spread out and he couldn't help but frown. Nie Tian, don't hesitate anymore. Finish him as soon as possible. Fat Cat's voice sounded. It seemed to be a little anxious. Okay. Tian nodded and released all the devil and god energies in his body. The sword aura of his body soared into the sky, and the cold aura in the space was immediately dispersed. The burly man felt that Tian's aura suddenly became stronger, and he couldn't help but be stunned. He gasped in his heart. "I will take your life with one sword attack." The corner of Tian's mouth twitched coldly. Then, he stepped on the ground and leaped into the air. He swooped down and fiercely slashed down with his sword. Boom! The sword aura surged, and the sword shadow was like a mountain. The terrifying sword carried the intent to kill and fiercely slashed down. The burly man felt that something was wrong and wanted to escape, but it was already too late. Crack! Crack, crack, crack! The sword shadow fell, and the space that was frozen by the ice demon silk directly collapsed and split open. The terrifying sword aura pressed down like a stormy sea and directly swallowed the figure. The burly man didn't even have the time to scream and died on the spot. Tian's figure landed and the sword aura around him retracted. He looked at the black silk in the air with a burning gaze. It was like a black whirlpool. Ice demon silk. Tian took a step forward and waved his hand to take the ice demon silk. The moment it touched his hand, he felt a trace of coldness invade his body, making him feel incomparably refreshed. What a strange silk! Tian felt the aura of the ice demon silk, and he was extremely surprised. Run! At this moment, the other men in black saw that the burly man was killed by Tian with one sword attack, and they panicked. They all screamed and wanted to escape. Unfortunately, Tang 13's figure was very fast. The ghost eye blade was extremely sharp. Several cold rays flashed, and the men in black, who were running away in panic, all fell down and exploded into a pool of blood. Every place where the men in black died, there was a ball of ice demon silk. These people all had ice demon silk on them. Tian, what is this? Tang 13 picked up a ball of ice demon silk and asked with a face full of confusion. I don't know either. Maybe he can tell us. Tian shook his head and smiled. Then, the shadow of Fat Cat appeared on his shoulder. Chapter 17:13. Tang 13 stared at the Fat Cat, and the first person she thought of was Jean de Bayo. In terms of body size, Jean de Bayo and the Fat Cat were definitely twins. What, Jean de Bayo? I am a nine-tailed chinchilla. The Fat Cat looked at Tang 13 with dissatisfaction. Tian couldn't help but smile. It seemed that Jean de Bayo was a chinchilla among humans. Tian calmed down and asked in a low voice, Little Fei, what exactly is this ice devil silk? When the Fat Cat saw the ice demon silk, she was very happy. This ice demon silk was definitely a good thing. Ice demon silk is the silk spat out by the ice demon silkworm, one of the 4 ancient beasts. This kind of silk is very scary. Not only does it have a high stickiness and cold power, it also has a strong resistance against all kinds of prohibition. The Fat Cat laughed and said, You really need this ice demon silk right now. Tian nodded. So this ice demon silk came from the ice demon silkworm. The ice demon silkworm was the same as the golden Leo, they were both ancient beasts. Although Tian had the power of demons and gods to resist the prohibition of martial arts, the power of 32 demons and gods was limited. If he had the help of the ice demon silk, it would be much easier for him. Tian, the ice demon silk doesn't suit my attribute. I'll give it all to you. Tang 13 felt the breath of the ice demon silk and smiled bitterly. The cold power of the ice demon silk was very strong. If Tang 13 used it, not only would it not improve, but it would also suppress it. However, Tian was different. The power of the stars in his body could change any attribute. Therefore, the ice demon silk didn't suppress him. Tian put away all the ice devil silk, and secretly rejoiced that he had another trump card. Tian, don't use the ice demon silk carelessly. Otherwise, it will attract other people's attention. The Fat Cat's blue eyes flashed and reminded Tian. I know. Tian smiled. Who didn't want something like the ice demon silk? The fat cat seemed to be thinking about something and was a little worried. Fat, what's wrong? Nye Tian saw the fat cat's reaction and asked. Nye Tian, I feel that these ice devilworm silkworms are new. I'm afraid that they have just been condensed from the ice devilworm's body. Little fat cat frowned and said in a deep voice. Nye Tian was shocked. You mean there's an ice demon silkworm here? Nye Tian of Tian asked. The ice fiend silkworm silk had just condensed. Didn't that mean that there was a living ice fiend silkworm? Demon silk of ice demon silk. Little fat cat nodded and said, You must be careful from now on. I'm afraid this 9 neonate forbidden hunt will be more difficult than you think. The fat cat nodded. You have to be careful. I'm afraid the 9 infant forbidden hunt will be more difficult than you think. The ice demon silkworm was one of the 4 ancient fierce beasts. If someone appeared with an ice demon silkworm during the 9 infant forbidden hunt, it would be disastrous. When the muscular man mentioned the Bing family, it seemed that there was a terrifying family behind him. After a while, Nye Tian became cold and stopped thinking about it. Tang 13, why are you here? Nye Tian looked at Tang 13 and asked with a smile. Tang 13 couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. She then briefly explained what happened to her. She and Tang Yuyu entered the chaotic abyss to investigate Tang Yuyu's background and the death of Tang 13's father. Then, they entered another world and arrived at a forbidden area in the Flame Heaven territory. Finally, they became participants of the 9 infant forbidden hunt. So, Tang Yuyu is here too. Nye Tian didn't ask too much and only smiled. Yes. Tang 13 nodded and said, Tang Yuyu is cultivating in the cultivation room. I came here to check out the 9 infant mountain range. Nye Tian, why are you here? Tang 13 looked at Nye Tian and asked. Nye Tian didn't hide anything and told her what he had experienced. The two smiled at each other. It seemed that they both had their own interesting experiences. Tang 13, why do these people want to kill you? Nye Tian looked at the bloodstains on the ground and asked with a frown. I was casually looking around the mountain range and accidentally discovered that they were setting up a trap. Out of curiosity, I decided to follow them. Then, they discovered me by accident, so they wanted to kill me. Tang 13 bitterly smiled and said helplessly. Setting up traps? Nye Tian was surprised. He didn't think that someone would come to the 9 infant mountain range to set up trap. He had to admit that it was a good idea. Let's go take a look at their traps, Nye Tian said with a smile. He was very interested in the traps that these people had set up. Okay, follow me. Tang 13 smiled faintly. Then, her silhouette flickered and she flew forward. Nye Tian followed closely. Very quickly, the two of them arrived at a steep valley. This is where they set up their traps. Tang 13 pointed at the valley and said. Nye Tian's gaze froze and he couldn't help but frown. He didn't see anything. Immediately, Nye Tian activated his holographic divine imprints and carefully sensed everything in the valley. Finally, he found something fishy. The terrain of the valley was very special. Those people used the terrain to set up an extremely hidden killing array. It seems that among those people just now, one of them is an array grandmaster. What a pity. Nye Tian frowned. To be able to set up such a killing array, one must have a very high level of mastery. This array was set up by a woman. It's just that she didn't chase after us. Tang 13 laughed and said. Nye Tian was once again surprised. He didn't think that the array grandmaster he was talking about was a woman. Little fatty, can you see through the killing intent of this spell formation? Nye Tian calmed down and asked the little fat cat. This array isn't very strong. It's about the 7th level. The person who set this array could be considered an array grandmaster. The fat cat's silhouette appeared as it pulled on its whiskers. Golden cat, you know about arrays? Tang 13 froze and was speechless. This was the first time she met a cat that knew about arrays. The fat cat glared at Tang 13 and ignored her. Arrogantly, it said, This kind of small array is a piece of cake to me. Tang 13 looked at the fat cat and couldn't help but smile. It was obvious that she didn't believe it. Someone's coming. At this moment, little fat cat suddenly called out, and its figure disappeared. In the next second, a silhouette appeared and landed less than 100 meters away from Nie Tian and Tang 13. You killed the Bing clan and you dare to appear here? You really don't know the meaning of death. A cold and murderous voice arose. The entire space was filled with a bone-chilling coldness. Nie Tian and Tang 13 turned at the same time and looked at the newcomer. The person before them was a lady dressed in blue. Her features were elegant and refined, and her temperament was cold and distant. Her blue dress fluttered in the wind, accentuating her alluring figure. "It's you!" Tang 13 saw the lady in blue and couldn't help but scream. Chapter 17-14. In the valley, Tang 13 could not help but be stunned when she saw the woman. She had never thought that she would appear again. "Are you the person who cast down the killing formation?" Nie Tian turned around and looked at the woman. He was able to remain calm as he asked with a frown. He had never thought that the person who cast down the killing formation would be so young. The blue-robed woman's expression was as cold as ice. Instead of answering Nie Tian's question, she said coldly, "You two really have guts. You actually dared to kill members of the Bing clan and snatch their ice devil silk." Nie Tian smiled faintly, but he seemed even more composed. He asked, "Are you with the people of the Bing family?" Although the woman's voice was cold and chilling, Nie Tian could not sense any killing intent from her at all. "I come from the same place as them, but I'm not with them," the woman said cold as she looked at Nie Tian. Nie Tian immediately understood that the woman's relationship with the people of the Bing family was just like him and Lai Yanjiufeng. Although they came from the same place, they belonged to different organizations. The woman should have cast down the killing formation with the people of the Bing family before discovering Tang 13. The people of the Bing family chased after Tang 13 and were killed instead. Judging from the woman's cold reaction, she had no intentions of revenge, so her relationship with the people of the Bing family was not that great. "If that's the case, we won't disturb you any longer." Nie Tian smiled faintly and turned around to leave. The woman was not weak. She was a peak over God. Coupled with the fact that she was a formation master, who knew what formations she was hiding on her, she was definitely not a simple person. Nie Tian did not want to provoke this person, so it was best for him to leave as soon as possible. "Now that you know that I've cast down a killing formation here, do you think I'll let you leave?" The woman sneered just as Nie Tian turned around. "Don't worry, lady. We definitely won't reveal what happened here." Tang 13 smiled and turned around to leave. "Do you really think I will believe you?" The lady in blue snickered again. In a flash, she appeared in front of Nie Tian and Tang 13. "What do you want?" Nie Tian narrowed his eyes. He still did not feel any killing intent from the woman in blue. "If you want to leave, you must promise me one thing." The lady in blue's eyes flickered as she spoke. "Miss, we have already made a promise. Don't push your luck." Tang 13 was getting impatient and spoke coldly. Nie Tian's eyes flickered as if he was interested. He signaled for Tang 13 to calm down and looked at the lady in blue. "Tell me about it. My condition is that you help me kill someone." The woman in blue spoke in a low voice. She seemed to have thought of something, and her icy cold eyes actually surged with a wisp of dense killing intent. When she was talking to Nie Tian before, although she looked very cold on the surface, there was no killing intent at all. But now, she was revealing a killer's intent that was hard to hide. This meant that she really hated that person. Kill someone. Nie Tian and Tang 13 were both startled. They didn't think the lady in blue would make such a request. "Who do you want us to kill?" Nie Tian quickly calmed down and teased. "Bing Ju." The lady in blue said the name word by word. Her eyes were flashing with anger. It was obvious how much she hated this person. "Bing Ju." Nie Tian was a little startled and asked, "The Bing clan?" "Yes." The lady in blue nodded. "He is the young master of the Bing clan. The people you killed before were his subordinate." The young master of the Bing clan. Nie Tian was startled again. He remembered something and bitterly chuckled. "It looks like we have no other choice." The lady in blue's eyes trembled slightly. She nodded heavily and said, "You have killed people from the Bing clan. Bing Ju will not let you go. Even if it's not for me, you must kill Bing Ju for your own survival." "I want to know, why do you want to kill this person named Bing Ju?" Nie Tian nodded and asked curiously. "That is my business. It has nothing to do with you," the lady in blue responded coldly. Her face was cold. "Then killing someone is your business. It has nothing to do with us." Tang 13 glared at the lady in blue cold and left. "I am sorry. If you don't want to tell us your reason, then we cannot help you." Nie Tian softly grinned and walked away. This lady in blue was a little strange. She was asking two strangers to kill someone for her, and yet she wasn't willing to say anything. How could there be such a good deal in this world? Though the lady in blue was powerful, if Nie Tian and Tang 13 insisted on leaving, she wouldn't be able to stop them. "Wait!" Seeing that Nie Tian and Tang 13 were really leaving, the lady in blue panicked. She said, "If you help me kill Bing Ju, I can let you enter the array of death." Nie Tian turned around and said with a plain smile, "Not interested." The lady in blue's array of death wasn't just a trap. It was also a way to save her life. If she enters the array, no one else will dare to enter. Sadly, Nie Tian was not interested at all. Because the array of death was a piece of cake for Fat Cat. If Nie Tian wanted to, he could enter it any time. Do you really want to know why? The blue-clouded woman was really anxious now, and she let out a low roar. Nie Tian slowly turned around and said, "If you really want us to help you, then you have to trust us." The lady in blue hesitated for a long time, and finally nodded. She said in a low voice, "Bing Ju killed my sister." Nie Tian's gaze froze. He saw that the lady in blue was shaking when she said this. "We will not provoke Bing Ju. But if he comes looking for us, we will not be polite." Nie Tian thought for a while and said, "You killed someone from the Bing clan. Bing Ju will definitely come looking for you." The lady in blue calmed down a little and said, "The demonic ice silk inside Bing Ju is very powerful. He is very powerful. You must be careful." "Thank you for the reminder." Nie Tian smiled and left. Bing Ju possessed the demonic ice silk. He must be able to sense the demonic ice silk on Nie Tian. Therefore, he will come looking for him soon. Nie Tian wanted to see for himself how powerful the demonic ice silk of the Bing clan's young master was. "I am Lan Yiru." Nie Tian and Tang 13 had just walked out of the valley when the lady in blue's voice arose. "Nie Tian." Tang 13. After Nie Tian and Tang 13 introduced themselves, they disappeared in a flash. Lan Yiru watched as the silhouettes disappeared into the forest. Her eyes flickered. She did not know why she suddenly said her name. "Bing Ju, since I am here to participate in the 9-infant forbidden hunt, I must kill you." After a while, Lan Yiru's eyes were filled with murderous intent. The reason why she participated in the 9-infant forbidden hunt was to kill Bing Ju and avenge her sister. Chapter 17:15. In the dense forest of the 9-infants mountain range, two silhouettes shuttled back and forth like the wind and lightning. These two people were none other than Nie Tian and Tang 13. "Nie Tian, you aren't really going to kill that absolute Bing, are you?" Tang 13 looked at Nie Tian and suddenly asked. Nie Tian grinned and asked in return, "Do you think that even if I don't kill absolute Bing, he will let me go?" "That's true." Tang 13 smiled and sighed. The 9-infants forbidden hunt is a killing game. As long as you participate in this game, you are destined to kill and be killed. Nie Tian bitterly chuckled, his expression helpless. This world is cruel. Rules are always set by the strong. The weak can only follow the rules. In the following days, Nie Tian and Tang 13 roughly checked out the Nine Infants mountain range. They didn't discover anything new and only familiarized themselves with the environment and terrain. Currently, the two of them were outside of a forest. Their gazes were fixed on a dark area far away. What the two of them were looking at was an extremely dark area. From afar, they could see a giant rock. On it, 4 words were carved. 9 Infants Forbidden Grounds. Forbidden Grounds? Tang 13 froze, but her eyes were heated. Nie Tian frowned. He used his spiritual energy to scan the area, wanting to see what was inside the Forbidden Grounds. Just then, his spiritual energy was suddenly attacked by a terrifying energy. His entire brain buzzed, his body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Nie Tian, what's wrong? Tang 13 was startled. She quickly held on to Nie Tian and asked anxiously. I'm fine. Nie Tian wiped away the blood stain on his lips. Calming down, he said, what a terrifying energy attack. Just now, when he tried to sense where the 9 Infants Forbidden Grounds was, he was attacked by an endless amount of energy. If it weren't for his powerful spiritual energy, the consequences would be unimaginable. It's a mind inhibition. Fat Cat's voice rose in surprise. Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He looked at the forbidden land of 9-headed infants with even more astonishment. What exactly was inside the forbidden land of 9 infants for it to be protected by a mental restriction? Nie Tian looked at the forbidden land of 9 infants from afar and felt a dark and boundless aura shrouding the outside of the forbidden land. It gave off an extremely eerie and terrifying feeling. Nie Tian, let this kid check out what's in the forbidden ground of the 9 infants. Fat Cat was also very curious. He had also tried it just now. Although he wasn't attacked by the spiritual restriction, he couldn't see anything. Nie Tian looked at Tang 13 and said, Tang 13, use your ghost eye to see what is inside this forbidden area. Even though Tang 13's ghost eye's senses weren't strong, it was able to sense certain things. Yes. Tang 13 nodded slightly and walked a few steps forward. When he was about 10 meters away from the forbidden area, he opened his ghost eye slowly. The 2 pupils turned into a strange black color. Terrifying eye power was released and shrouded the forbidden area. Tang 13's ghost eye is even scarier. Nie Tian felt the eye power in the air and exclaimed. As the ghost eye opened, waves of black eye power surged in the air and spread towards the forbidden land of 9 infants. The black eye power was like a thread and it was endless. Bit by bit, it seeped into the forbidden land of 9 infants. Tang 13's expression was tense and large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He felt that deep inside the forbidden land of 9 infants, there was an extremely terrifying dark aura. It was this dark aura that shrouded the forbidden land of 9 infants. Tang 13 wanted to get close to this dark aura, but he was blocked by a terrifying force. It was like an invisible giant hand that prevented his eye power from getting close. Blood Moon Ghost Eye, open! Tang 13 didn't want to give up. He shouted in his heart and his black eyes slowly changed. They turned into a dark red color like a blood moon. It was bloody and creepy. Blood Moon Ghost Eye. Nie Tian suddenly felt that the eye power in the air was getting stronger. When he saw the color of Tang 13's eyes change, he couldn't help but scream. He didn't think that Tang 13's ghost eye would open to the Blood Moon Ghost Eye. The ghost eye could be divided according to the degree of opening. Single-edge ghost eye, double-edge ghost eye, triple-edge ghost eye, Thousand Calamities ghost eye, and Blood Moon ghost eye. Before Tang 13, no one had ever been able to open the Blood Moon ghost eye. Even Tang 13's grandfather, Tang Hao, barely opened the Thousand Calamities ghost eye. Last time when Nie Tian and Tang 13 separated, Tang 13's ghost eye was already at the Thousand Calamities ghost eye. Now that they met again, Tang 13 had opened the Blood Moon ghost eye. This was too powerful. When the Blood Moon ghost eye opened, Tang 13's eye power suddenly increased. Like a tsunami, it rushed towards the forbidden land of 9 infants. At that moment, Tang 13 saw another world. It was a dead world without any signs of life. Every inch of space was filled with darkness. At this time, Tang 13 suddenly saw that in the center of the dead silence, a black ball of light was surging, releasing a dark aura into the air. The black ball of light was very strange. It was as if it was the center of the darkness. Waves of dark energy were spreading in all directions. Tang 13 froze. Then, she used her eye power to try and feel for the black ball of light. Ah! Just then, the black ball of light seemed to have sensed something. It suddenly shook and let out a shrill scream. This sharp cry was cold, gloomy, and extremely sharp. It was like the first cry of an infant at birth, yet it seemed to be extremely gloomy and cold. It didn't have the slightest aura of hope or life, and there was only a dense aura of despair and death. Ah! At the same time, Tang 13 screamed in pain. She retracted all of her eye power. Her eyes were bleeding and her entire body trembled. She stumbled back a few steps and fell to the ground. Tang 13. Seeing this, Nie Tian stepped forward and helped Tang 13 up. Nie Tian. Tang 13 stood up. Her face was shaking and her teeth were chattering. She asked nervously, Did you hear that sound? That shrill cry shocked Tang 13. The black ball of light released a terrifying amount of energy that hurt his ghost eye. I heard it. Nie Tian nodded, his face was dark. How could Nie Tian not hear that cry? It was so shrill that it was impossible for him to not hear it. Although it was just a cry, Nie Tian sensed an extremely dark aura. He even felt the fiend god power in his body become restless. What was that? Tang 13 asked, her face full of shock. I don't know. Nie Tian shook his head. He didn't know what was making that cry either. Everything was far too strange. Nie Tian stared at the forbidden ground of the 9 infants. His eyes flashed with heat. He wanted to go in and see what was going on. Chapter 17-16. Outside the forbidden ground of the 9 infants, more than a dozen strong silhouettes landed at the same time. They released a violent aura that pressed down on Nie Tian and Tang 13. Boom! In an instant, Nie Tian and Tang 13 felt a wave of pressure coming at them. It was as if it was coming from all directions. They had no way to avoid it and could only endure it. Ugh! The two of them trembled and spat out a mouthful of blood. Their faces were as white as paper. Nie Tian's eyes widened. He barely withstood the pressure, but his face was full of shock. These 10 silhouettes were all superior gods. They were very strong, but the strangest thing was that these people could completely ignore the prohibition spell and could unleash their full strength. Even if there was only one superior god who could ignore the prohibition spell, Nie Tian and Tang 13 would not be able to handle it. Moreover, there were more than a dozen of them at the same time. Nie Tian could feel that there was an extremely dark power surging within these people. It was this power that allowed them to ignore the prohibition spell. At the same time, he could feel that this dark power was very similar to the dark aura in the forbidden ground of the 9 infants. They should be the same kind of power. It must have been when Tang 13 used the Eye of the Ghost Eye to sense the forbidden ground of the 9 infants and alerted these people. They must be the guardians of the forbidden ground of the 9 infants. Bastards, who are you? The leader was a warrior dressed in black. His face was dark and fierce. He roared and the aura around him suddenly increased. An even more terrifying pressure was released. Nie Tian and Tang 13 felt a terrifying power rushing towards them. It almost tore their bodies apart. Nie Tian resisted with all his might, but he couldn't even speak. These people were too strong. Just their aura alone was enough to make him feel unbearable. Tang 13 was in even more danger. Her martial body was not as strong as Nie Tian's. At this moment there were many wounds on her body. Her body could not take it anymore. They are the participants of the forbidden ground of the 9 infants. Just then, a cold voice sounded. Then, a figure dressed in purple landed. His body was spotless and elegant like an orchid in an empty valley. When Nye Tian saw who it was, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes, and a hint of joy appeared in them. The person who suddenly appeared in front of him was none other than the person with the 9 colored pupils, Gao Yuhan. Elder. When the martial artists saw Gao Yuhan, they were stunned at first. Then, they bowed slightly in a very respectful manner. Seeing this, Nye Tian could not help but be surprised. He did not expect Gao Yuhan to have such a high status. It seemed like she was an elder of the sky of 9 infants. They are just participants of the Jiao Ying forbidden hunt. Let them leave, Gao Yuhan said coldly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it contained an undeniable dominance. The leader of the group was stunned for a second, and his face became embarrassed. He said, Elder, this is against the rules. These 2 brats trespassed into the forbidden land of 9 Yin. We must hand them over to the Elder Council. The forbidden ground of 9 infants was the most important place in the sky of 9 infants. The job of the forbidden ground protectors was to guard the forbidden ground and not allow anyone to enter. If anyone trespassed, they had to be handed over to the elders. I will say it one more time. Let them leave. Gao Yuhan frowned. Her aura became cold. She spoke in a low voice, extremely overbearing. The leader was shocked again. He didn't think Gao Yuhan would be so aggressive. As for the Elder Council, I will personally explain it to them. Gao Yuhan's eyes flashed. She looked at Nye Tian and Tang 13 and said, You can leave now. Don't come back here again. Many thanks, Elder. Nye Tian bowed slightly and then strode away. The forbidden ground protectors watched from the side but didn't dare to stop them. Nye Tian and Tang 13 left the forbidden ground. After running for thousands of meters, they finally stopped, breathing heavily. What happened just now was too dangerous. If Gao Yuhan hadn't appeared in time, the consequences would have been unthinkable. With Nye Tian and Tang 13's abilities, it was impossible to fight against a dozen paramount gods who were not affected by the forbidden ground. Tang 13, are you okay? Nye Tian let out a long breath. He took out a dan and handed it to Tang 13. Tang 13 swallowed the dan and the color on her face eased. Nye Tian, who are those people? Why can they ignore the forbidden ground? Tang 13 calmed down and asked with a frown. I'm guessing that they should be the guardians of the forbidden ground of the 9-headed infant. There is a dark force in their bodies, and it is this force that allows them to ignore the martial way prohibition, Nye Tian muttered, but he could not help but frown. He didn't understand. Why did the protectors of the forbidden ground have such dark energy? Also, that sad cry that came from the forbidden ground of the 9 infants was too strange. Tang 13, what did you see in the forbidden ground? Nye Tian took in a deep breath and asked. Tang 13 explained everything she saw in detail. She said, that black ball of light was the center of the dark energy. That sad cry also came from that ball of light. Black ball of light. Nye Tian mumbled. His eyes were shaking. He could feel that there was a terrifying secret hidden in the forbidden ground of the 9 infants. Nye Tian, let's go back first. Tang 13 was still in shock. Her ghost pupil was also injured and blood could be seen at the corner of her eye. Nye Tian nodded slightly and glanced at Tang 13. He noticed that there was a black halo circulating in the latter's eyes. It was extremely strange. Nye Tian was taken aback. Tang 13 hadn't activated her ghost eye, so where was the black light coming from? Nye Tian, what's wrong? Tang 13 noticed that something was wrong with Nye Tian's expression and couldn't help but ask. Nye Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he carefully examined the black light in Tang 13's eyes. Beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He could feel that the black halo was the dark energy of the forbidden ground of the 9 infants. Without a doubt, when Tang 13 sensed the forbidden ground of the 9 infants, the ghost pupil was infiltrated with the dark energy. "Nia Tian, are you okay?" Tang 13 froze. It was obvious that she didn't realize that something was wrong with the ghost pupil. "Nia Tian, don't tell him yet." Just then, Fat Cat's voice suddenly rose and reminded Nia Tian. Nia Tian was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, "I'm fine." "That's good. Let's leave." Tang 13 smiled and turned to leave. There were only a few days left until the hunting ban. Nia Tian and Tang 13 needed to recover their strength. The two didn't waste any time and ran towards the outer edge of the Mountain of the Nine Infants. When the two returned to the outer forest, they saw a purple silhouette standing in the distance. It was Gao Yuhan. She seemed to be waiting for them. Nia Tian walked to Gao Yuhan's side and called out, "Elder." "Come with me," Gao Yuhan said coldly, then walked towards an empty space. Chapter 17:17. Outside of the Nine Infants mountain range, in a dense forest, Nia Tian and Tang 13 stood behind Gao Yuhan. Gao Yuhan had her back to them and did not speak for a long time. "One of you is Nia Tian, and the other is Tang 13, right?" After a short while, Gao Yuhan finally spoke. Her voice was less icy cold and was more peaceful. "Yes." The two nodded and wondered how Gao Yuhan knew their names. Gao Yuhan slowly turned around and did not explain. Instead, she locked her gaze on Tang 13 and asked, "What did you see in the forbidden ground of the Nine Infants?" Tang 13 froze at first and then wondered if she should tell them what she saw. "Tang 13, tell the elder what you saw." Nia Tian smiled and said to Tang 13. Tang 13 nodded and told him what she saw. Nia Tian felt that Gao Yuhan was not their enemy. Otherwise, she would not have come to save them. After hearing Tang 13's story, Gao Yuhan's eyes darkened and her expression became worried. After a long time, her eyes flashed strangely. She seemed to look at Tang 13 but did not say anything. Nia Tian froze and then understood. Gao Yuhan also saw that Tang 13's ghost eye was invaded by a dark aura. "Elder, what is that thing in the forbidden ground of the Nine Infants?" Nia Tian's eyes flashed and he asked in a low voice. Gao Yuhan's expression turned cold. "I do not know." She really did not know. In the sky of the Nine Infants, only two people knew the truth about the forbidden ground of the Nine Infants. One was the leader of the sky of the Nine Infants, the Holy Mother of the Nine Infants, and the other was the leader of the sky of the Nine Infants, the Holy Fire of the Nine Infants. Other than the Holy Mother of the Nine Infants and the Holy Fire of the Nine Infants, even the leader of the elders did not know what was hidden in the forbidden ground of the Nine Infants. Gao Yuhan was only an ordinary elder in the sky of the Nine Infants. How could she know the truth about the forbidden ground of the Nine Infants? "Elder, you told Rui Qianyu that the forbidden ground of the Nine Infants is more complicated than we thought. What do you mean by that?" Nia Tian became cold and asked. "Since you are already here, there is no possibility of you withdrawing from the Jiu-Ing Forbidden Hunt. Therefore, what do you mean by saying this in advance? It is not beneficial for you." Gao Yuhan's tone became cold again. She said, "After the Jiu-Ing Forbidden Hunt begins, you will naturally know what it means." Nia Tian's eyebrows furrowed and his face grew grim. "Don't go near the forbidden land of the Nine Infants again. If you alert the guardian of the forbidden land again, I won't be able to save you," Gao Yuhan said coldly. She then turned around and left. Nia Tian and Tang 13 froze. They didn't expect Gao Yuhan to leave just like that. It seemed like she only wanted to know what Tang 13 had seen in the forbidden ground of nine-headed infants. Nia Tian. At this moment, Gao Yuhan's figure suddenly stopped and shouted Nia Tian's name. "Elder." Nia Tian was stunned for a moment and looked at Gao Yuhan. "Protect Rui Qianyu well. Don't let her use the 9-colored pupils," Gao Yuhan said in a low voice. Then, she moved and disappeared. Nia Tian was stunned and couldn't react for a long time. It was this reminder again. Previously, Gao Yuhan had warned Rui Qianyu not to use the 9-colored pupils. Now, she reminded Nia Tian again that it was better not to let Rui Qianyu use the 9-colored pupils. Why can't Rui Qianyu use the 9 colored pupils? Nie Tian was confused. Rui Qianyu's biggest advantage in the 9 infants' forbidden hunt was the 9 colored pupils. If she couldn't use the 9 colored pupils, she wouldn't be able to fight at all. Gao Yuhan seemed to be worried about something. It was as if something terrible would happen if Rui Qianyu used the 9 colored pupils. Ah! Just as Nie Tian was confused, Tang 13, who was beside him, suddenly screamed. Tang 13. Nie Tian suddenly realized what was happening. He saw Tang 13 holding his head with his hands and looking like he was in pain. Oh no! In the next moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt a terrifying dark energy. His heart dropped and he screamed. The dark aura hidden within the ghost eye suddenly became berserk. My eye! Tang 13 screamed again. His eyes emitted waves of dark energy and blood began to drip from his eyes. Tang 13. Seeing Tang 13 in this state, Nie Tian panicked. He didn't know what to do. It's the dark energy. It's trying to consume his ghost eye. Fat Cat's voice rang out. She was also panicking. Just then, Tang 13's silhouette suddenly leaped up and floated in midair. His eyes continued to emit dark energy and his entire body was engulfed in darkness. Fat, what do we do? Nie Tian's eyes flickered and his voice trembled. His ghost eye has already been activated to the Blood Moon ghost eye. He should be able to withstand the dark energy. Fat Cat's voice quivered. However, his tone was not confident. Nie Tian didn't know what to do. He could only watch from below. After a while, the dark energy around Tang 13 dissipated and returned to his eyes. Then, his silhouette descended and he calmed down. Nie Tian, what happened to me? Tang 13 stepped forward. Recalling what just happened, his expression turned into one of shock. Nie Tian's eyes froze. He felt that the dark energy in Tang 13's eyes had intensified. He couldn't help but frown. After thinking for a while, he told the truth. Tang 13 listened to Nie Tian and gasped. He didn't think that his ghost eye would be invaded by the dark energy. What will happen to my eyes? After a while, Tang 13 calmed down and asked in a low voice. Nie Tian shook his head. He didn't know what would happen to Tang 13. Your eyes will be consumed by the dark energy. Just then, the Fat Cat's silhouette appeared and said in a low voice. Nie Tian and Tang 13 froze at the same time. They stared at the Fat Cat in shock. That was only the first time. From now on, the dark energy will become stronger and stronger. You won't be able to last much longer, Fat Cat said in a low voice. Is there any way to stop the dark energy from consuming my eyes? Nie Tian frowned and asked nervously. Yes. The Fat Cat nodded, but his eyes became a little strange. What is it? Nie Tian and Tang 13 screamed at the same time. Their eyes shone with passion. Enter the forbidden ground of the 9 infants and see what that black ball of light is. The Fat Cat's eyes were sharp and heavy. This. Nie Tian and Tang 13 gasped at the same time. The Fat Cat's method was to enter the forbidden ground of the 9 infants. The forbidden ground of the 9 infants was guarded by a large number of elite. Even if they could enter, who knew what was inside the forbidden ground? This is your only chance. If you don't figure out where that black ball of light came from, you can only wait to be consumed. The Fat Cat smiled bitterly, feeling helpless. Do we really have to enter the forbidden ground of the 9 infants? Nie Tian took a deep breath. The flicker in his eyes was quickly replaced by determination. Chapter 17-18. 3 days later, on the outskirts of the Jiuying mountain range, everyone walked out of the cultivation room and came to a spacious area. Today was the day of the Jiuying hunting restriction. Next, the Jiuying mountain range would welcome a bloody feast of slaughter. Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu stood together and smiled at each other. After 10 days of hard training, Rui Qianyu had reached the early stage of High God, the same as Nie Tian. Training in the training room for 10 days was equivalent to training in the outside world for years or even decade. Rui Qianyu was able to use her own strength to open the 5th pupil of the 9 color pupils. This showed how talented she was. It was not surprising that her strength had increased so much. Nie Tian. At this time, Tang 13's figure appeared. Her strength had also reached the early stage of High God. Nie Tian looked at Tang 13 and noticed that the dark aura in her eyes had become more intense. The black halo in her eyes had also become more obvious. Tang Yuyu stood beside Tang 13. His body was even more voluptuous than before. Anyone with weak willpower would have had a nosebleed. Fortunately, the past few days had been peaceful. The dark aura in Tang 13's eyes did not act up again. Nie Tian glanced at everyone. There were about 160 people here. Originally, there were warriors from 18 affiliated worlds participating in the hunting restriction. In total, there should have been 180 people. However, in the first 10 days there were some fights between the participants. Many people were killed in advance. For example, the people from the Bing family who were killed by Nie Tian and Tang 13 in the Jiuying mountain range. At this time, a figure landed on the high platform. It was none other than Gao Yuhan. Gao Yuhan was obviously the person with the highest status in the Jiuying hunting restriction. She stood on the high platform and glanced at everyone coldly. Then, she explained the rules of the Jiuying hunting restriction and announced, "The Jiuying hunting restriction begins." Everyone looked at the Jiuying mountain range behind them. Once they stepped into the mountain range, they would officially become the hunter or the prey. Then, the protectors led their subordinates and entered the mountain range from different directions. Nie Tian and Tang 13 split up for now. They each followed their own guardians. The two of them agreed to meet up at Lan Yiru's valley in 3 days. Bai Feng led Nie Tian and the others to the periphery of the mountain range. One more step and they would step into the mountain range. The Jiuying Forbidden Hunt is a cruel massacre. Since you have chosen to participate, you have chosen to kill. Bai Feng's gaze swept over everyone and he said in a deep voice, "Let me remind all of you. Don't trust anyone but yourself. Show no mercy to anyone. Remember, you entered the 9 infants mountain range to kill." Bai Feng's words stunned everyone, and their eyes could not help but tremble. No one had expected Bai Feng to say something like that. However, what he said was very true. Although it was a little cruel, it was the truth. After entering the 9 infant mountain range, there were only 2 paths in front of you. Either you die inside or you walk out alive. However, it was definitely not an easy task to walk out alive. "Alright, you may enter." Bai Feng nodded solemnly and said no more. His words just now were a very important reminder, but he did not know how many people would listen to it. The group no longer hesitated and stepped into the mountain range. It was easy for them to enter the mountain range now, but it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven if they wanted to walk out. After entering the mountain range, everyone's mood clearly became much heavier. No one spoke. Suddenly, Lian Zhufeng walked next to Nie Tian, smiled faintly, and said playfully, "Nie Tian, I will not kill you, at least not now. You still refuse to give up on the tear of the princess?" The corner of Nie Tian's lips curled up slightly. He knew what Lian Zhufeng was thinking. He was definitely after the tear of the princess. Of course. The corner of Lian Zhufeng's lips curled up. He said, "I failed to obtain the tear of the princess last time. I will not fail again this time." After saying that, Lian Zhufeng turned around and left with Luo Zian and the others. They were sent by Ghost King Palace, and Nie Tian and the others were sent by Dark Azura Hall. Although they both came from Shinra Ghost Realm, they belonged to different forces. Therefore, it was not safe for them to stay together. It would only make them suspicious of each other. Nie Tian looked at Lian Zhufeng and Luo Zian's figures and frowned. He sighed inside, Lian Zhufeng, so troublesome. Up until now, there were only 2 people that Nie Tian was more wary of. One was Lian Zhufeng, and the other was Duan Tianhen, the possessor of the fifth seal. Therefore, these two people were the last people he wanted to meet. What about you? The corner of Nie Tian's lips curled up slightly. He looked at Jiang Qiji and the others and asked indifferently. Right now they had two choices. They could stay together, or they could go their separate ways. I will not stay with weaklings. Jiang Qiji cold smiled and glanced at Nie Tian coldly. Then, he turned around and left. Nie Tian did not stop him. Even if Jiang Qiji stayed with them, he would still be troublesome. It would be better if he left. I'll stay with big brother Jiang. Chen Rui smiled and followed beside Jiang Qiji. Nie Tian smiled bitterly. It seemed that Jiang Qiji had some strength to make Chen Rui follow him. Gui Wukan, what's your choice? Nie Tian looked at Gui Wukan and asked indifferently. It doesn't matter to me. Gui Wukan gave a laugh, with a carefree appearance on his face. Then let's go together. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He felt that Gui Wukan was related to the ghost Marshal Wild Sand that the Sword Elder mentioned. Therefore, he paid special attention to him. Okay. Gui Wukan smiled and nodded in agreement. Nie Tian looked at Jiang Qiji and Chen Rui's departing figure. He did not stay any longer and walked towards a dense forest. The next half of the day was relatively peaceful. Nie Tian had checked the 9-infant mountain range in advance. He was more familiar with the terrain and found a hidden valley. He did not want to look for anyone. As long as he could not be discovered, it would be a good way to save his life. The 9-infant mountain range was huge. The 18 teams entered from different directions. It was not easy to meet each other. Nie Tian, Rui Qianyu and Gui Wukan were hiding in the valley. Rui Qianyu was quietly cultivating. Nie Tian stood at the entrance of the valley with Gui Wukan beside him. Gui Wukan, I want to ask you about a person. Nie Tian thought for a while and opened his mouth, preparing to ask about the ghost Marshal Wild Sand. Speak. Gui Wukan smiled faintly and was extremely calm. Huh. However, at this moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt something. His expression changed, and he looked outside the valley. Bang! In the next moment, a black figure suddenly descended and stood outside the valley. A frightening cold aura was released from his body, directly freezing the space. Nie Tian and Gui Wukan looked at each other. Their figures moved and arrived outside the valley. At this moment, a black figure appeared in front of them. He had a fierce face and a tall figure. However, he was extremely skinny, like a skeleton standing there. Chapter 17-19. Nie Tian sensed the aura of the icy demon Silk from the black-clothed man, and immediately realized that this person was most likely the young master of the Bing family, Bing Ju, whom Lan Yiru had mentioned to him. The power of ice emanating from this person was terrifying, far stronger than the few people Nie Tian had killed before. Even more terrifying was the fact that this person was an early-stage paramount god. This was the second participant Nie Tian had seen who was an early-stage paramount god. The first one was Duan Tianhen. He had guessed correctly. The person in front of him was none other than the young master of the Bing family, Bing Ju. Bing Ju's purpose for coming here was very clear. Revenge. I've finally found you. Bing Ju locked his gaze on Nie Tian and spoke coldly. His eyes were cold to the extreme. It was obvious that Bing Ju was here to seek revenge on Nie Tian. You're Bing Ju, right? Nie Tian sensed the icy, killing intent from Bing Ju, but he wasn't the least bit afraid. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, Looks like the icy demon Silk on me gave me away. You're not too stupid to know who I am. Looks like Lan Yiru told you something. Bing Ju's eyes were cold as he said, You killed someone from the Bing family, and you still dare to keep the icy demon Silk on you? You're courting death. The icy demon Silk's aura was unique. Even if it was kept in a spatial ring, it couldn't be concealed. Nie Tian was indeed a bit stupid to run around with the icy demon Silk. He didn't expect Bing Ju's icy demon Silk to be so sensitive and find him so quickly. If you want to avenge the Bing family, then make your move. Nie Tian didn't waste any more words. Cold said and took a step forward, his battle intent surging. Since he couldn't run, he might as well fight. Brat, I want to see what kind of ability you have to be able to kill the Bing family. Bing Ju smiled coldly. Immediately after, a cold chi was released from his body, freezing the entire space. He raised his hand, and a ball of terrifying ice demon silk surged in his palm. In an instant it turned violent, transforming into numerous ice tentacles. Like long snakes, it attacked Nie Tian. Nie Tian frowned slightly. The ice demon silk in Bing Ju's body was indeed very powerful. It allowed him to unleash his strength to such an extent that he could freeze an entire space. Nie Tian estimated that Bing Ju's strength was not much weaker than Duan Tianhen's. It should be known that Duan Tianhen was a person who possessed the fifth seal. A small ball of ice devilish silk was actually comparable to the fifth seal. This was too terrifying. Nie Tian, be careful. Sensing the piercingly cold intent in the air, Gui Wukan could not help but wrinkle his brows. Retreating hastily, he warned Nie Tian. He had not expected Bing Ju, who had suddenly appeared, to be so powerful. Cutting 8 desolations. Facing Bing Ju, Nie Tian did not dare to be careless. He released the 32 divine and demonic energies at the same time. Wild sword will surged out from his body. Rumble! The sword will and the cold intent clashed. A terrifying roar resounded in the air. The space was instantly tightened, as though it was about to collapse in the next moment. Boom! Immediately after, a violent explosion occurred. Nie Tian and Bing Ju retreated at the same time. Then, they steadied themselves. Nie Tian retreated dozens of meters. A trace of blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. His expression was somewhat ugly. On the other hand, Bing Ju only retreated slightly and was unharmed. Silver-haired brat, you are indeed strong. Bing Ju smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with even more intense killing intent. Nie Tian's strength was beyond his expectations. This further strengthened his killing intent. Nie Tian was currently only a high god. If he were to grow, he would be absolutely terrifying. Nie Tian took a deep breath. His complexion immediately improved. Fortunately, Bing Ju's ice demon silk wasn't too strong. Although it was somewhat resistant to martial arts restrictions, it wasn't completely immune to them like Lai Yin Jiufeng. Therefore, his strength was still greatly suppressed. Otherwise, Bing Ju's strength was 2 realms higher than Nie Tian's, so he could kill the latter in a single hit. You're not bad yourself. Your ice demon silk is much stronger than those pieces of trash, Nie Tian smiled calmly. The corner of his lips curled coldly. You're courting death. Bing Ju let out a furious roar as the devilish ice silk around him expanded and swirled around him like a black storm. In the next moment, they morphed into numerous devilish ice claws that reached towards Nie Tian. Bing Ju's attack was extremely ruthless. He was determined to kill in a single hit. Nie Tian frowned slightly. Then, he activated the 3 evil sword seal inside his body. A terrifying sword aura rose into the sky, making him look like a sharp sword that stood on the ground, unstoppable. What a terrifying sword aura! Gui Wukan was stunned. He could not help but frown. Even his eyes were a little dazed. He was a swordsman, and his sword cultivation had reached the sword essence realm. Naturally, he could sense the power of Nie Tian's sword aura. This is the power of a sword seal. Gui Wukan's eyes trembled. He was shocked. He had seen many terrifying sword seals, but the one Nie Tian had unleashed shocked him. The power contained within the sword seal made his sword intent tremble. Gui Wukan had never expected that Nie Tian's body would actually contain such a powerful sword seal. Nie Tian, it looks like I've underestimated you. Gui Wukan frowned and thought to himself. Boom! In the next moment, Nie Tian's figure soared into the sky. He swung his sword in a domineering manner. The terrifying sword shadow was thousands of meters long, and it slashed at Bingju. Bang, bang, bang. Bingju was stunned for a moment. Then, he struck out with his palm. Countless ice devil claws bombarded the huge sword shadow. A violent explosion sounded in the sky. It was extremely terrifying, as if the space itself was about to collapse. The huge sword shadow in the sky pressed down like a mountain. Bingju immediately felt the boundless pressure from the sword, which made it difficult for him to breathe. Ice demon seals the sky. Only then did Bingju realize how terrifying Nie Tian was. Then, he growled and the ice demon silk around him became even more violent. It froze the space within a few hundred meters around him. Hum! The huge sword shadow paused in the air, and then let out a low roar. The space shook violently, and the momentum of heaven and earth changed instantly, as if it was about to collapse. Bang! In the next moment, the two terrifying forces collided head-on. The huge sword shadow suddenly collapsed, and the frozen space also cracked inch by inch. Endless sword intent and cold air spread out, wreaking havoc in the space. Nie Tian's figure suddenly paused in midair, and then he landed on the ground, standing there like a sharp sword. Bingju, on the other hand, was forced to take a few steps back. Although she looked a bit bedraggled, she wasn't injured at all. She stood firmly on her feet and fixed Nie Tian with a pair of cold, murderous eyes, filled with astonishment, shock, and a hint of apprehension. He had never thought that Nie Tian's strength would be so terrifying. No wonder he could kill those people from the Bing family so easily. What a terrifying pair! Gui Wukan watched from the side, his eyes flickering. The terror of this battle had far exceeded his expectations. Chapter 1720. Nie Tian and Bingju's strength was indeed terrifying, but it was not enough to make Gui Wusan feel fear. Gui Wusan's eyes revealed a hint of playfulness. He was ready to see how strong Nie Tian and Bingju really were. Silver-haired kid, what kind of power is that? Bingju's eyes trembled. He had thought that his previous move was enough to kill Nie Tian on the spot, but the result was completely different from what he had expected. He was nearly seriously injured by Nie Tian. Although Nie Tian was a swordsman of the essence of sword, his strength was after all only that of an early-stage high god. His sword intent should not be this strong. There was one more thing that made Bingju even more surprised. He could not understand how Nie Tian was able to resist the suppression of the martial arts prohibition. Bingju, your strength should not be limited to this. Go all out. Nie Tian did not answer Bingju. Instead, he sneered with a provocative look in his eyes. The power of the 32 demons and the 3 evil sword seal had given Nie Tian an extremely strong resistance against martial arts prohibition. But he could not maintain this state for long, so he had to end the battle as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in the valley, Rui Qianyu was watching from afar. She knew that even if she went over, she would not be able to help Nie Tian. She might even become a burden to him. Nie Tian had warned her not to use the rainbow pupils unless it was absolutely necessary. In fact, this warning came from Gao Yuhan. Although Nie Tian did not know why Gao Yuhan did not allow Rui Qianyu to use the rainbow pupils, he chose to believe her. Bingju stared at Nie Tian with a grim look on his face, but he didn't launch an attack immediately. At this moment, he felt a tinge of fear in his heart. He had a hunch that Nie Tian's strength was not limited to this. If the battle continued, it would be hard to tell who would win. Woo! At this moment, a low chirping sound suddenly came from afar. It was very strange, like the low chirping of some insect. Although weak, it could travel very far. Bingju's expression changed when he heard the sound. He was a little nervous. Nie Tian also heard the sound and couldn't help but frown. He couldn't tell what it was. Brat, you're lucky this time. Next time, you'll die for sure. Bingju calmed down and looked at Nie Tian deeply before leaping away. Nie Tian went blank for a moment before a confused look appeared on his face. For Bing Ju to suddenly leave, he must have encountered something. That bird cry just now seemed to have made him very nervous. Looking at Bing Ju's figure, Nie Tian couldn't help but frown and ask, what happened? He did not chase after Bing Ju because Bing Ju was not an ordinary martial artist. He was too strong. If Nie Tian wanted to kill him, it would not be enough to rely on the power of the 32 fiend gods and the 3 evils sword seal. However, the 9 infants forbidden hunt had just begun, and Nie Tian did not want to reveal his trump card so soon. Although Gui Wuchan was here, Nie Tian did not trust him. He felt that he was hiding something. Nie Tian, if I didn't hear wrongly, the low chirping sound just now was the icy demon Silkworm's voice. Fat Cat's voice sounded. Nie Tian, if I didn't hear wrongly, that low moan just now should be the voice of the demonic ice silkworm. At this moment, little Fat Cat's deep voice rang out. Ice devilish silkworms. Nie Tian was taken aback and almost cried out. Fat Cat had suspected that someone had brought an icy demon silkworm to the 9 neonate forbidden hunt. Now it seemed that his suspicions were true. Bing Ju had left suddenly because he heard the icy demon silkworm's call. The icy demon silkworm was one of the 4 ancient beasts. If it was an adult icy demon silkworm, it would be terrifying. Thinking of this, Nie Tian couldn't help but sweat beads on his forehead. Nie Tian, are you alright? Rui Qinyu came to Nie Tian's side and asked nervously. Nie Tian smiled faintly, indicating that he was fine. Using the demonic god's power and the 3 evil sword seal had consumed too much of his strength. However, he could recover quickly with his recovery ability. Nie Tian, the sword seal you used just now seemed to be the power of the bloodline, right? Gui Wuchan walked up and said with a smile. Yes. Nie Tian nodded and did not explain in detail. He and Gui Wuchan were just strangers. At most, they knew each other. Gui Wuchan smiled faintly and did not ask too much. At this time, Nie Tian suddenly thought of something and frowned. The icy demon silkworm's silk appeared in his hand and he murmured, The icy demon silkworm is with me. My whereabouts are exposed to Bing Ju at any time. In this way, he can find me at any time. This is too stupid. After saying that, Nie Tian's eyes couldn't help but tighten. He was ready to destroy the icy demon silkworm. Although the icy demon silkworm could resist the suppression of the martial arts restriction, Nie Tian didn't want to expose his whereabouts to others. Therefore, he could only destroy the icy demon silkworm. This is what Bing Ju uses to resist the martial arts restriction? Gui Wuchan took a step forward and looked at the icy demon silkworm's silk in Nie Tian's hand. His eyes couldn't help flashing with a hint of passion. Yes. Nie Tian nodded with a bitter smile and said, This thing is the icy demon silkworm. Bing Ju sensed the aura of the icy demon silkworm, so he can find me. You want to destroy the icy demon silkworm? Gui Wuchan suddenly looked up at Nie Tian and asked in astonishment. Nie Tian nodded solemnly. He had no other choice in order to not expose his whereabouts. The aura of the icy demon silkworm was very difficult to eliminate, so he could only destroy it. Give the icy demon silkworm to me. I'll draw Bing Ju away for you. Gui Wuchan's eyes flickered and he suddenly said. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He looked at Gui Wuchan in astonishment and said, You've already seen Bing Ju's strength. Is it worth it to lose your life for a mere icy demon silkworm? The strength that Bing Ju had displayed earlier was very powerful. Nie Tian did not believe that Gui Wuchan had the strength to contend against Bing Ju. Am I very stupid? Gui Wuchan looked at Nie Tian and smiled strangely. He said, Since I dare to ask for the icy demon silkworm, it proves that I have the strength to contend against Bing Ju. And even if I die, it'll be because of my stupidity. It has nothing to do with you. Nie Tian was stunned. He never thought that the ordinary-looking Gui Wuchan would actually say something so domineering. Gui Wuchan was not very old, around 1,000 years old. His talent was evident for him to possess the strength of an overgod at such a young age. Furthermore, he was extremely confident at this moment. He definitely did not seem like the kind of person who was in a hurry to court death. Do you really want the icy demon silkworm? Nie Tian looked at Gui Wuchan and asked in a deep voice. Of course. Gui Wuchan smiled faintly with a calm expression. All right. Since that's the case, the icy demon silkworm is yours. Nie Tian thought for a moment. He no longer hesitated and handed the icy demon silkworm to Gui Wuchan. Many thanks. Gui Wuchan smiled faintly. He kept the icy demon silkworm and turned around to leave. As long as he left Nie Tian, he would be the one that Bing Ju would hunt down next. Nie Tian, you said that you wanted to ask me about a person. You haven't said anything yet. Gui Wuchan had just taken a step when he suddenly thought of the previous matter. He abruptly turned around and said with a faint smile. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment. Only then did he remember that he originally wanted to ask Gui Wuchan about Gui Wuxia. Gui Wuxia was a name that the Sword Elder had told Nie Tian. When the Sword Elder had left, he had asked Nie Tian to go to the God Sealing region to look for a person called Gui Wuxia. Since Gui Wuchan and Gui Wuxia had the same surname, he might know this person. What I want to ask is, do you know a person called Gui Wuxia? Nie Tian smiled faintly and said. Chapter 1721. He really knows Ghost Marshal Wild Sand. When Nie Tian mentioned Ghost Marshal Wild Sand's name, he couldn't help but cry out in his heart upon seeing Gui Wuchan's abnormal reaction. In the next moment, Gui Wuchan calmed down slightly, staring at Nie Tian as he asked in a deep voice, How do you know the name Ghost Marshal Wild Sand? Nie Tian gawked for a moment. Gui Wuchan was clearly extremely nervous and angry at the same time. Even a trace of killing intent could be felt from his eyes. I don't know Ghost Marshal Wild Sand, but a friend of mine is looking for him. Nie Tian nodded his head, barely able to maintain his calm. What friend? Gui Wuchan's gaze was deep as he asked in a cold voice. Nie Tian looked at Gui Wuchan. The latter's expression was tense, clearly trying to interrogate him. At this moment, Nie Tian's expression couldn't help turning dark as he asked in a cold voice, What exactly is your relationship with Ghost Marshal Wild Sand? That's none of your business. Answer me, who exactly is looking for Ghost Marshal Wild Sand? Gui Wuchan was extremely powerful as he spoke in a cold voice. The killing intent in his eyes was no longer concealed, becoming extremely obvious. Nie Tian gawked once again. It seemed that Gui Wuchan and Ghost Marshal Wild Sand's relationship wasn't ordinary. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so abnormal. Nie Tian pondered for a moment, before briefly explaining the matter regarding Sword Elder. After listening to Nie Tian, Gui Wuchan became much calmer. His face was gloomy as he opened his mouth after a long time. That strand of remnant soul you mentioned, is it Jian Qinqi? Jian Qinqi. Hearing this name, Nie Tian's expression couldn't help but change as he nodded his head. Sword Elder's name was Jian Qinqi. Southern Gui Wu, Northern Gui Qi. Gui Wuchan looked at Nie Tian, the killing intent in his eyes dissipating as he muttered in a daze, So you're Lord Jian Qingqi's friend. I was thinking too much. Nie Tian was slightly stunned. Gui Wuchan's reaction was indeed a little too excited. He never expected that Gui Wuchan would actually know the name Jian Qingqi. After all, Elder Jian was a person who was imprisoned hundreds of thousands of years ago. Gui Wucan, you still haven't answered my question. Exactly what is the relationship between you and Lord Gui Wu Guangsha? Nie Tian calmed down, before taking a step forward and asking. He's my teacher. Gui Wucan solemnly said, a sliver of brilliance flickering within his eyes. You're the disciple of Lord Ghost Marshal Wild Sand? Nie Tian was stunned and was extremely surprised. Originally, he had assumed that there was an extremely high possibility that Gui Wuchan was a member of the Gui Wu clan. However, He never imagined that he would actually be a disciple of the Guewu Wild Sand. No wonder he was so nervous earlier. Gui Wukong solemnly nodded his head, though his expression was somewhat solemn. Upon seeing this, Nie Tian could not help but frown and immediately asked, Gui Wukan, are you willing to bring me to see Lord Gui Wuquang Sha? The Sword Elder has entrusted me to pass a message to him. Gui Wukan shook his head with a smile. However, it was an extremely helpless smile as he said, I don't even know where teacher is. The reason I came out this time is to look for him. This. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, and was unable to say anything. Gui Wukan also did not know where Gui Wuquang Sha was. This was going to be troublesome. After a moment, Gui Wukan's expression recovered, and he said with a forced smile, Nie Tian, after the 9-infant forbidden hunt ends, if we're still alive, perhaps we can go look for teacher together. Sure. Nie Tian nodded his head with a smile. Currently, this was the only thing he could do. He felt that Gui Wukan should know some information about Gui Wuquang Sha, just that he did not say it. I'll be leaving first. Gui Wukan faintly nodded his head, before his figure moved, disappearing into the dense forest outside of the valley. Gui Wukan, since you took the initiative to take the Ice Demon Silk, you should have the ability to protect yourself. Nie Tian muttered as he looked at Gui Wukan's back figure. Gui Wukan was the disciple of Gui Wuquang Sha. His strength should not be weak, just that he had not revealed it before. Southern Gui Wu, Northern Qin Chi looks like the Sword Elder and Gui Wuquang Sha were the two peak swordsmen in the past. Nie Tian recalled Gui Wukan's words, and could not help but smile. In the sword world, only peak swordsmen had their own titles. Just like how Nie Tian had the title of Proud Sword when he was in the Heaven Realm. Since Gui Wuquang Sha and Jian Qinqi had titles, it meant that they were peak swordsmen in the sword world at that time. Nie Tian decided that after the 9-infant forbidden hunt ended, he would obtain the 7-leaf dragon's mouth orchid and fuse it with the Terra Vein source. Then, he would go look for Gui Wuquang Sha. Nie Tian, what should we do next? Rui Qianyu came to Nie Tian's side, and could not help but ask worriedly. Let's go to another place first, and meet up with Tang 13 3 days later. Nie Tian thought for a while, and decided to leave this place first. He did not want to clash with others, so he decided to go to another place that he had scouted before. Although the place in front of him was hidden, Bing Ju had already been here, so it was no longer safe. It was better to leave as soon as possible. The two did not delay, and immediately left the valley, rushing towards another place. The two figures shuttled through the dense forest, and the surroundings were very quiet. It was only the first day of the 9-infant forbidden hunt, and everyone was very calm. Most of the people were still familiarizing themselves with the environment of the 9-infant mountain range. After a while, Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu arrived at a hidden valley. It's here. Nie Tian smiled faintly, and pointed to the valley in front of him. For the next 3 days, he planned to hide in this valley, and then meet up with Tang 13. After entering the valley, Nie Tian checked again, and after confirming that there were no abnormalities in the valley, he let Rui Qianyu enter the valley. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. In these 3 days, everything was very peaceful, and no one came to disturb Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu. In reality, they could have continued to hide here. Under normal circumstances, very few people would have been able to find this place. However, it was time for Nie Tian and Tang 13 to meet up, so they had to leave. Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu left the valley, and headed towards the valley where Lan Yiru set up the killing array. With Tang 13's capabilities, she should be fine. Nie Tian thought to himself, but he was still a little worried. He was worried that the dark energy in Tang 13's ghost eye would act up again. The two of them moved very quickly, and they were about to reach the killing array in the valley. Just then, Nie Tian's body suddenly stopped. He stopped on top of a giant rock, and his eyes turned nervous as he stared at the empty space in front of him. "Nye Tian, what's wrong?" Rui Qianyu came to Nye Tian's side. Seeing his reaction, she couldn't help but frown. Nye Tian signaled Rui Qianyu to step back, and at the same time, he stepped forward. He stared at the sky, and his qi began to gather. "Watch out!" Immediately, Nye Tian's eyes widened and he screamed. Boom! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! In the next moment the air trembled slightly, and then a dense rain of arrows whizzed out, blotting out the sky and covering the earth as they flew toward Nye Tian and Thousand Leaves. PSSST, PSSST, PSSST. The rain of arrows was extremely fast, and they collided in the air, making ear-piercing noises. Nye Tian's qi surged, and he activated his firmament wind armor, enveloping him and Rui Qianyu. Chapter 1722. Nye Tian's eyes widened in surprise at the sudden scene that happened in midair. He didn't expect the arrows to be able to release violent fire energy and turn into a sea of fire that rushed towards him. "Ants, accept your death obediently." At practically the exact same moment, a gloomy and miserable voice resounded in the sky, and it revealed a murderous and ghastly aura. The sea of fire in the air was extremely violent. The fire spread across half the sky, and it seemed as though the entire space was about to be burned. The entire area instantly turned into a huge furnace that was incomparably hot. Rui Qianyu wasn't strong to begin with. In addition, she couldn't use her 9-colored pupils. Under the pressure of the terrifying fire, she found it difficult to breathe. Her face was tense, and she was about to suffocate. Shield of the Astral Soul. At the critical moment, Nye Tian let out a low roar. His body shook, and an endless amount of astral energy was released. The Shield of the Astral Soul was activated and it enveloped the Extreme Wind Firmament battle armor. Boom! In the next moment, the violent sea of fire spread over and hit the Extreme Wind Firmament battle armor and the Shield of the Astral Soul. An ear-piercing tearing sound could be heard. Although the sea of fire was violent, Nye Tian's defense was extremely strong. He forcefully withstood the impact of the fire. However, the fire was very strange. Although it didn't break through Nye Tian's defense, it continued to burn in the space. The fire energy slowly invaded the space. Nye Tian. Rui Qianyu's martial body wasn't strong to begin with. When she felt the terrifying fire energy entering her body, she couldn't bear it. Her face turned red and she felt as though she was about to be burned. Nye Tian sensed that something was wrong. Immediately, a ball of astral energy surged out of his palm and formed a shield that enveloped Rui Qianyu. Rui Qianyu instantly felt the fire energy dissipate, and her face regained some color. At this moment, Nye Tian saw through the layers of fire that a figure in gray descended and stood right in front of them. Still not dead yet? The gray-robed man was a martial artist with a protruding mouth and monkey cheek. His eyes trembled slightly as he let out a sharp cry. His eyes were filled with violence and disdain. In his eyes, Nye Tian and Rui Qianyu were just two ants that he could kill at any time. The space within a few hundred meters around Nye Tian was enveloped in terrifying flames. The power of flames constantly seeped in, releasing a terrifying burning power. This flame aura seems somewhat familiar. Nye Tian relied on his astral soul shield and extreme wind firmament battle armor to forcefully resist the corrosion of the flames. He stared at the raging flames around him as his lips twitched involuntarily. The aura of the flames felt extremely familiar to him. It's the 7th Devil Fire Moth Dragon Skyflame. At this moment, the fat cat's voice rang out, but it was not nervous at all. Instead, it chuckled and said, "No wonder this flame can't be dispelled. It's actually the 7th Demon Fire. It really is the Moth Dragon Skyblaze." Nye Tian's expression changed slightly as he once again felt the flame aura in the air. His eyes flickered involuntarily as a look of joy appeared on his face. How could ordinary flames penetrate his extreme wind firmament battle armor and astral soul shield? Only the demon fire on the demon fire list had such terrifying burning power. Brat, I didn't expect you to be so knowledgeable to recognize the seventh demon fire. The sharp-mouthed martial artist sneered and said coldly, It's your honor to die at the hands of the seventh demon fire. Surrounded by the moth dragon Skyflame, even if Nye Tian had heaven-defying abilities, he would definitely die. Is that so? The corners of Nye Tian's mouth curled up coldly as a sharp look flashed in his eyes. Then, a strange flame surged out of his palm. It was the chaotic flame. How dare a mere seventh demon fire be so insolent against the chaotic flame formed by the fusion of two supreme flames? Nye Tianling said coldly. He raised his palm, and the chaotic flame immediately became violent. Like a whirlpool, it released a terrifying devouring power and instantly swallowed up the surrounding moth dragon Skyflame. Immediately afterwards, the fiery aura in the surrounding area vanished, leaving only the primal chaos flame surging madly in Nye Tian's palm. How is this possible? The sharp-mouthed martial artist cried out in disbelief at the sudden scene before him. How could he believe that the moth dragon Skyflame had been swallowed up by another flame? Furthermore, the flame in Nye Tian's hand did not look strange, and its aura was not strong. How could it have swallowed up the moth dragon Skyflame? Brat, what is the power of the flame in your hand? The sharp-mouthed martial artist asked in a deep voice. He was still relatively calm as he stared at the chaotic flame in Nye Tian's hand. The flame in my hand is the Monarch of Flames. When your moth dragon Skyflame meets my flame, it can only crawl and kneel. Nye Tian smiled faintly and stepped forward in an extremely domineering manner. The chaotic flame was formed by the fusion of two supreme flames. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it was the Monarch of Flames. Arrogant. However, the sharp-mouthed cultivator was very angry. Immediately after, a strange crossbow appeared in his hand. The corner of his mouth rose into a cold smile as he coldly said, Smelly brat, this master wants to see what kind of flame is this? As soon as he finished speaking, the sharp-mouthed martial artist's arm trembled. Then, countless arrows shot out from the crossbow, heading straight for Nye Tian. Countless arrows flew through the air and fused together. The power of fire contained within the arrows burst forth, and a gigantic fire dragon appeared in the sky. On its back was a pair of flaming wings. Moth Dragon Phantom. Nye Tian looked at the winged fire dragon with a tremble in his eyes, but he could not help but smile strangely. Then, he raised his palm, and the chaotic flame instantly expanded in mid-air. It was like a huge flame vortex surging wildly in the air. Roar! In mid-air, the moth dragon phantom suddenly let out a low roar. However, it seemed to have sensed something terrifying, and it seemed to be screaming in pain. Boom! The next moment, the chaotic flame suddenly released a terrifying power of flame, which spread into the void. The invisible suppressive force firmly controlled the moth dragon phantom. It instantly shattered and was directly absorbed and devoured. Once again, the moth dragon Skyflame was absorbed and devoured. The sharp-mouthed martial artist looked at the scene in the sky and could not help but gasp. Even his eyes trembled. The scene in front of him was far beyond his expectations, and he panicked. Nye Tian smiled slightly. Then, he took a step forward, and the chaotic flame condensed into a flaming sword shadow in the air. It suddenly fell and swooped down at the sharp-mouthed martial artist. No. In an instant, the sharp-mouthed martial artist felt a real killing intent. His eyes trembled violently as he screamed. Unfortunately, it was too late. Since Nye Tian had seized the opportunity, how could he let it go so easily? Boom! The flaming sword shadow suddenly fell, and the sharp-mouthed martial artist did not even have the chance to scream before he died on the spot. Nye Tian's figure landed and looked ahead. His eyes could not help but tremble, and a burning light flashed in them. Chapter 1723. Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames. Nye Tian looked at the ball of flame and sensed its aura. The corners of his lips curled up involuntarily as his eyes blazed. The ball of flame in front of him was the true form of the seventh demon Fire Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames. Nye Tian had not expected to obtain the legendary seventh demon Fire Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames so easily. That sharp-mouthed, monkey-like fellow must have been lying in ambush here and suddenly attacked all passing martialists. It was indeed very troublesome for martialists to be trapped by the Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames when they were defenseless. Even powerhouses like Duan Tianhen or Absolute Bing would find it difficult to escape. The Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames' burning power was very strong, and most martialists did not have a strong resistance to demonic fire. This sharp-mouthed martialist had probably killed many people with the Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames. However, he had never expected to encounter a freak like Nye Tian. If Nye Tian did not have the chaotic flame, it would be very difficult to deal with the Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames. The chaotic flame was the supreme of all flames. It had absolute suppression over the Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames, so it could directly absorb the flame power released by the Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames. Nye Tian walked over and grasped the Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames in his palm. The seventh demon Fire Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames. If the chaotic flame directly absorbs it, it will probably greatly increase its power, the fat cat said with a chuckle. However, Nye Tian shook his head. He did not intend to absorb the Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames. The chaotic flame was formed by the fusion of two supreme demonic fires. Even if absorbing the Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames would increase the chaotic flame, the increase would not be too great. Instead, it would be a waste of the seventh demonic fire. Nye Tian smiled faintly and put away the Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames, preparing to leave it for Zhang Yifeng. He still remembered that he still owed Zhang Yifeng a demonic fire. The Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames were just right. Nye Tian temporarily placed the Moth Dragon Heavenly Flames in the chaotic flame, but he did not allow the two to fuse. What a strange crossbow! At that moment, Nye Tian saw an extremely strange crossbow on the ground. It was the same crossbow that the sharp-mouthed martialist had used to shoot the arrows in the sky. The design of the crossbow was very strange. It looked like a short stick, not a crossbow at all. Nye Tian used his divine sense to sense it and immediately found the key. There were actually many spell formations hidden within the crossbow, and there was even a spatial divine formation. There was a huge space inside, and there were tens of thousands of arrows. There was also a sealing divine formation in the crossbow. The sharp-mouthed warrior sealed the power of the Moth Dragon's heavenly flare in the crossbow's seal. Then, together with the arrows, it became a sky full of fire arrows. Nye Tian gave it a try. He sealed part of the Moth Dragon's heavenly flame in the crossbow and fired an arrow. It turned a giant tree that was hundreds of meters tall into ashes. Nye Tian looked at the scene in front of him and couldn't help but narrow his eyes in confusion. The power of this arrow was too great, far exceeding his expectations. He looked at the crossbow in his hand and carefully probed it with his divine sense. Only then did he realize that there was a fire divine formation inside the crossbow that could amplify the power of the fire arrows. It had to be said that although this sharp-tongued martial artist was insidious, his methods were truly eye-catching. There were so many mysteries hidden in a small crossbow. Although the sharp-tongued martial artist was not powerful, he could definitely kill late overgods or even peak overgods instantly with the crossbow. It was just that he was just unlucky to have encountered Nye Tian, who possessed the chaotic flames. Nye Tian then took a closer look and discovered that there were 3 small words engraved on the end of the crossbow: Fire Beacon Crossbow. Fire Beacon Crossbow. Not a bad name. Nye Tian smiled faintly and murmured, "Since the Moth Dragon's heavenly flame can be used on the Fire Beacon Crossbow, then the chaotic flames can be used too." The moth dragon's heavenly flame could erupt with terrifying power after being strengthened by the fire beacon crossbow, so the power of the chaotic flames would be even more terrifying. Moreover, the chaotic flames had already fused with Nyetian, so it was even more convenient to use. The fire beacon crossbow was forged from an extremely special material, so it was extremely resistant to fire. Coupled with the protection of formations, it was not destroyed. Nyetian stowed the fire beacon crossbow away and could not help but smile. He had gained another trump card. Qianye, let's go. Nyetian turned around and looked at Rui Qinyu. They were about to leave. Nyetian was worried about Tang 13's safety, so he did not delay and immediately made his way to the killing formation in the valley. The 9 neonate forbidden hunt was even more spectacular than Nyetian had imagined. They could encounter all sorts of strange martial artists here. Duan Tianhen, who possessed the 5th seal, Bing Ju, who possessed the ice demon silk, formation master Lan Yiru, and the sharp-tongued martial artist who had just been killed by Nyetian. The 9 neonate forbidden hunt was becoming more and more spectacular. Nyetian and Rui Qinyu moved very quickly. They arrived outside the killing formation in the valley before long. Nyetian stopped and gestured for Rui Qinyu to wait outside. Then, he stepped into the valley. When he arrived at the valley, he saw that it was empty. There was no one there, only the killing formation. Lan Yiru is not here, and Tang 13 is not here either. Nyetian frowned. His eyes were shaking, and the worry in his heart increased. He walked out of the valley and prepared to wait here. Perhaps Tang 13 would arrive soon. The two of them waited in a dense forest outside the valley. Anyone who entered the valley would see them. After waiting patiently for half a day, there was still no sign of Tang 13 or Tang Yuyu. Nyetian's expression grew even more worried. He thought to himself, did something really happen to them? Nyetian, let's wait a little longer. Rui Qinyu saw that Nyetian was getting impatient and whispered, yes. Nyetian nodded heavily. Other than waiting, there was nothing else he could do. The 9 Infants mountain range was far too big. Even if Nyetian purposely searched, he might not be able to find Tang 13. On top of that, there were enemies everywhere. It was very dangerous. After waiting for half a day, the sky turned dark. Nyetian's expression darkened. You bastard, you can't run away. Just then, a violent laughter arose from afar. It was very arrogant and carried with it a strong killer's intent. Nyetian froze. Without hesitation, he dashed over. Rui Qinyu was worried that Nyetian would be too impulsive and quickly followed. Nyetian landed and saw 2 silhouettes running. A man and a woman were being chased by 5 to 6 warriors. It's them. Nyetian's gaze froze. He saw the man and the woman's faces clearly. They weren't Tang 13 or Tang Yuyu, they were Jiang Qiji and Chen Rui. The two of them were originally with Nyetian, but they had separated a few days ago. Nyetian didn't think that he would run into them here. The people chasing them were very violent and they caught up very quickly. Brother Jiang, save me! Chen Rui's speed was a little slower and she was immediately caught up. She couldn't help but scream for help. However, Jiang Qiji didn't care about her. Instead, he ran even faster. Bastard! Seeing this, Nyetian cursed silently. This Jiang Qiji sure had some tricks up his sleeve. He didn't even save his own companion. Go to hell. At this time, a figure chased after Chen Rui and threw a punch at her. Nyetian's body moved and his lips curled into a cold smile. The fire beacon crossbow appeared in his hand. Chapter 1724. With a thought, Nyetian activated the fire beacon crossbow in his hand as he hovered in the air. Immediately, several dozen arrows shot out, raining down like rain. Don't! Chen Rui could feel the cold wind whistling behind her. She knew that the pursuer's fists had arrived, so she could not help but cry out. However, at this moment, she suddenly felt countless scorching fire arrows whistle past her. They basically brushed past her shoulder. Boom! In the next moment, the arrows exploded and released the power of fire. They connected into a sea of fire and shot towards a black figure. The sea of fire surged and landed loudly. The figure did not even have the time to cry out before he was directly reduced to a pile of ash. Not even his godhead was left behind. A cultivator's godhead was extremely fragile within the restrictions of martial arts. It was very easy for it to be destroyed. Chen Ruoi suddenly looked back. Her eyes flickered when she saw that her pursuer had died directly. She was shocked. Chen Ruoi, are you fine? At this moment, Nie Tian landed and smiled faintly. Chen Ruoi could not help but be stunned when she saw Nie Tian appear. She said in surprise, "Did you save me? What do you think?" Nie Tian laughed. He looked at Jiang Qiji, who had stopped nearby, and sneered, "If you relied on Jiang Qiji to save you, who knows how many times you would have died long ago." Chen Ruoi had originally separated from Nie Tian and followed Jiang Qiji because she wanted to borrow his power to protect herself. However, she had never thought that Jiang Qiji would not care about her life at all when he was in danger. Jiang Qiji's face sank when he heard Nie Tian's words. He felt like there was a ball of fire in his chest that he could not swallow or spit out. He had never thought that Nie Tian would actually appear at a time like this. "Chen Ruoi, back off for now." Nie Tian smiled gently and no longer paid any attention to Jiang Qiji. He took a step forward and blocked the other pursuers. The power of the crossbow had exceeded his expectations. The cultivator who had been killed was also a mid-overgod, yet he was unable to fight back at all. He was directly burnt to a crisp. Just now, Nie Tian had used the power of the moth dragon's heavenly flames instead of the chaotic flames. The flame of chaos was much more terrifying than the moth dragon heavenly flame. Coupled with the fire beacon crossbow, it was unimaginably terrifying. "Brat, who are you?" The pursuers stopped at the same time and looked at Nie Tian with trembling eyes, unable to conceal the fear in them. The scene just now was too strange, and it made them feel fearful. "I don't want to kill anymore. If you know what's good for you, get lost," Nie Tianling said coldly, his eyes cold and murderous. "Humph, really?" The leader of the pursuers was a black-robed man. Although he wasn't very tall, the muscles on his body bulged, making him look like an iron tower. He sneered and took a step forward. The chi around him surged and condensed into the silhouette of a ferocious tiger, extremely arrogant. The power of the bloodline. Nie Tian's eyes flickered slightly when he saw this. He could not tell that this guy possessed such a powerful bloodline. Nie Tian had seen a wound on Jiang Qiji's chest earlier. He should have been injured by this person. Jiang Qiji possessed the bloodline of Xing Tian, yet he had actually been injured by this person. It was clear that this person's bloodline was extremely powerful. "Brat, I want the crossbow in your hands." The black-robed man smiled coldly and stared at the crossbow. "Do you think you're worthy?" Nie Tian's eyes trembled before he sneered. This guy had actually taken an interest in the crossbow. "You're looking to die," the black-robed man roared out. He directly moved and lunged over like a ferocious tiger. His presence was extremely ferocious, as if he wanted to rip Nie Tian to shreds. Swish, swish, swish. Nie Tian lightly stomped on the ground and the crossbow shot out 3 arrows. They were like dancing fire snakes, swift and fierce. The 3 fire arrows bombarded the black-robed man's body, but were directly bounced off. They could not hurt him at all. The black-robed man threw a punch, but Nie Tian easily dodged it. He landed on the ground and smiled coldly. "Can you hurt me with this kind of attack?" Nie Tian's lips curled up slightly. This guy's martial body was extremely strong, much stronger than the previous guy. It seemed that if Nie Tian wanted to kill him, he would have to use some real skills. Thinking of this, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up. Immediately after, the chaotic flame gushed out of his body and directly entered the crossbow. "Die for me." The black-robed man let out another furious roar, and the aura around him grew even stronger. waves of violent blood chi were released from his body, and a huge blood-red tiger that was hundreds of meters long was condensed. The tiger enveloped his body, and in the blink of an eye, it pounced towards Nie Tian. It was terrifying that the black-robed man was able to display such powerful strength under the suppression of the martial prohibition spell. Nie Tian, watch out! Rui Qianyu saw this and couldn't help but scream. Her pretty face was full of anxiety. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Then, a terrifying killing intent appeared in his eyes. Since this guy was determined to die, then he couldn't blame Nie Tian. Roar! In the next moment, the blood-colored tiger swooped down like a mountain, causing the earth and sky to tremble. Almost at the same time, the fire beacon crossbow shot out over 100 arrows, instantly exploding in the air. Following which, the terrifying power of fire condensed together, transforming into a flaming sword that soared into the sky, piercing towards the blood-red tiger. Seeing this scene in the sky, the surrounding people were dumbfounded. Nobody had thought that the small crossbow in Nie Tian's hand could explode with such terrifying power. Boom! In the next moment, the blood-colored tiger and the flaming sword collided. The space trembled slightly, and then endless waves of air exploded in all directions. Feeling the terrifying impact, everyone could not help but back away. Arg! At this moment, a heart-wrenching howl rang out. The blood-colored tiger was actually unable to withstand the impact of the chi of fire and collapsed instantly. The black-robed man swayed in the air before being enveloped by the terrifying flames. He was swallowed by the rolling flames. The scene fell into a deathly silence. Everyone stared at Nie Tian. Their shock was written all over their faces. It was difficult to imagine that the small crossbow actually possessed such terrifying power that it could directly kill a peak-over god with a terrifying bloodline. Nie Tian steadied himself and let out a long breath. He couldn't help but smile as he was overjoyed inwardly. The power of the crossbow had amazed him. If he did not have the crossbow, Nie Tian definitely would not have been able to kill the black-robed man with just the chaotic flames. He might even have been injured by the man instead. However, the crossbow had increased the power of the chaotic flames and killed the black-robed man directly. The crossbow really is good stuff. I'll have to study it later when I have time. Nie Tian smiled faintly and thought to himself, "Are you still not going to piss off?" Then, he took a step forward and swept his murderous gaze across the other pursuers as he coldly roared. Only then did the others react. They did not dare to stay any longer and turned to flee. Nie Tian smiled and did not chase after them. Nie Tian. However, at this moment, Rui Qianyu's voice suddenly rang out. She was extremely panicked. Chapter 1725. Qianyu. Nie Tian saw that Rui Qianyu was in danger. His expression changed and he screamed. Rui Qianyu was being held tightly by a claw. She was in a critical situation. The person threatening Rui Qianyu was none other than Jiang Qizhi. Jiang Qizhi. Nie Tian stared at Jiang Qizhi with a dark gaze and yelled out the latter's name word by word. He felt all the blood in his body boiling and his entire body was shaking uncontrollably. He didn't expect that Jiang Qizhi would attack Rui Qianyu at this moment. Nie Tian, give me the crossbow. Jiang Qizhi smiled cold. Then, he lifted Rui Qianyu into the air and said in a low voice, "Don't play any tricks. I only need to move a little and her life will be gone." Jiang Qizhi wanted the fire beacon crossbow. He must have seen how powerful the fire beacon crossbow was, and that's why he wanted it. However, he didn't know that the fire beacon crossbow needed demonic fire to activate. As someone without demonic fire, the fire beacon crossbow was useless in his hands. Jiang Qizhi, if you dare to hurt her, I will make you regret walking out of your mother's womb, Nie Tian said in a low voice. He raised his palm, and the fire beacon crossbow flew in the air and slowly approached Jiang Qizhi. Don't worry. As long as you give me the crossbow, I won't hurt your woman. Jiang Qizhi smiled. He only wanted the fire beacon crossbow. He didn't dare to hurt Rui Qianyu. He knew how powerful Nie Tian was, so he didn't dare to offend Nie Tian. The fire beacon crossbow slowly approached Jiang Qiji and was about to reach him. Just then, a figure suddenly flew by and grabbed the Wind Fury crossbow. Then, the figure stepped on the ground and was about to leave. Chen Rui. The sudden scene caused Nie Tian and Jiang Qiji to be stunned at the same time. Then, the two of them saw the figure clearly and cried out in surprise. At this time, the person who snatched the fire beacon crossbow was Chen Rui. Jiang Qiji and Chen Rui were really despicable. Nie Tian had just saved Chen Rui. Who would have thought that Chen Rui would not only not repay his kindness, but she even tried to steal the fire beacon crossbow. How shameless! Bastard! Seeing this, Jiang Qiji growled and put down Rui Qianyu. He stomped on the ground and punched at Chen Rui. Chen Rui reacted quickly. While she was in the air, a cold, murderous intent appeared at the corner of her mouth. She said coldly, "Jiang Qiji, go to hell." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of sharp arrows were shot from the fire beacon crossbow towards Jiang Qiji. Seeing this, Jiang Qiji's face paled in fright. His silhouette stiffened as he activated the heaven-punishing armor. He had just witnessed the power of the fire beacon crossbow, so he didn't dare to be careless. However, to his surprise, the dozens of sharp arrows had no power at all. They were directly bounced off when they hit the heaven-punishing armor. How could this be? Chen Rui was shocked. Her face was full of shock. This! Jiang Qiji was also dumbfounded. He had no idea what was going on. Why was the fire beacon crossbow so powerful in Nie Tian's hands, but useless in Chen Rui's hands? While the two of them were still in a daze, Nie Tian's figure flashed, and he had already rescued Raindrop and Thousand Leaves. After making sure that Rui Qianyu was fine, Nie Tian let out a long sigh of relief. Rui Qianyu was also distracted just now. She was too focused on Nie Tian, so she was controlled by Jiang Qiji. Otherwise, with her colorful pupils, she might be able to defeat Jiang Qiji. Nie Tian landed on the ground and glanced at Jiang Qiji and Chen Rui. He spat out one sentence, "You too deserve to die." Jiang Qiji and Chen Rui were stunned. They felt the murderous intent in Nie Tian's eyes. Their faces turned pale and they were terrified. Nie Tian's power was too terrifying. They really couldn't fight against him. Brother Nie Tian, I will return the fire beacon crossbow to you. Please let me go. Chen Rui came back to her senses. Her face was full of fear and her voice was trembling as she begged for mercy. You deserve to die, Nie Tianling said coldly. Then, a murderous aura rose around him and he slashed at Chen Rui without any hesitation. Boom! The sword shadow fell. Chen Rui didn't even have a chance to react. She was directly swallowed by the sword shadow and nothing was left. Nie Tian's figure moved. He held the fire beacon crossbow in his hand and glared at Jiang Qiji. He said in a cold tone, "Jiang Qiji, it's your turn." Jiang Qiji suddenly froze. His little face was as white as paper. His teeth were chattering and he couldn't speak. Nie Tian, we were all sent by the Sun Luo temple leader. Please forgive me this time. Jiang Qiji forced himself to calm down, but his voice couldn't stop trembling. Forgive? Nie Tianling laughed and said coldly, "Do you think that's possible?" Jiang Qiji wanted to steal the fire beacon crossbow. Nie Tian could forgive this, but he used Rui Qianyu's life to threaten him. This was unforgivable. Rui Qianyu was Nie Tian's reverse scale right now. Anyone who touches it will die. Jiang Qiji felt the murderous intent in Nie Tian's eyes and realized that it was too late. Nie Tian, I will kill you. In the next second, Jiang Qiji knew that begging for mercy was useless. He released the Xingtian bloodline inside his body and prepared to fight to the death. Jiang Qiji's Xingtian bloodline was activated to the extreme, and the Xingtian armor enveloped his entire body. exuding a terrifying aura. Nie Tian looked at Jiang Qiji and sneered. His eyes were cold and murderous without any hesitation. Die. Then, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. The fire beacon crossbow appeared again and the fire beacon sword howled. It was a fatal attack that left no chance of survival. Jiang Qiji's silhouette also moved at this moment. He leaped into the sky and threw a punch. He wanted to fight against Nie Tian head-on. Boom! In the next moment, the flaming sword shadow arrived with a loud bang, bombarding the Heaven Punishment armor. With a loud explosion, the Heaven Punishment armor directly collapsed, and Jiang Qiji's figure was submerged in the flames, turning into a cloud of ashes. The flames in the air exploded and only dissipated after a long time. Nie Tian's silhouette landed. The murderous intent in his eyes dissipated and his expression returned to normal. He didn't want to kill, especially those who came here with him. However, Jiang Qiji and Chen Rui were too despicable and had crossed his bottom line. He had no choice but to kill them. The world of martial arts was cruel. Sometimes you have to kill to stop killing. Nie Tian, Rui Qianyu was still in shock. She came to Nie Tian's side, her delicate face still unable to hide the nervousness. Nie Tian smiled faintly. What happened just now was indeed very dangerous, but fortunately it was a close call. The fire beacon crossbow was indeed very powerful. It had exceeded Nie Tian's expectations. The crossbow combined with the chaotic flames allowed Nie Tian to instantly kill a peak over god bloodline cultivator. Would it be possible if I infuse sword intent or astral force into the crossbow? Nie Tian looked at the crossbow in his hand and could not help but ask in doubt. If the crossbow could be infused with sword intent or astral force, it would be even more powerful without a doubt. Definitely not. Before Nie Tian could look at it, Fat Cat's voice rang out, "The scrolls and formations within the crossbow are all fire elemental, so only fire elemental power can be strengthened. Even if you infuse sword intent into the crossbow, it won't be able to erupt with terrifying power." I see. Nie Tian smiled helplessly. Only now did he remember that the various formations and seals within the crossbow were all fire elemental. If I have time in the future, I can modify the formations and seals within the crossbow so that it can accept various elemental powers. At that time, you will be able to use sword intent or astral force. Fat Cat snickered and gave Nie Tian a pleasant surprise. Nie Tian smiled faintly. Right now, I can only use fire elemental powers. Afterwards, Nie Tian put away the crossbow. It was already dark, but Tang 13 had not arrived yet. This made Nie Tian even more worried. Chapter 17:26. Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu waited outside the valley for a long time. Tang 13 and Tang Yuyu still hadn't appeared. This made them anxious. Did something really happen to Tang 13's ghost pupil? Nie Tian thought to himself. He wasn't worried that Tang 13 would be killed by others. He was just worried about the dark energy inside the ghost pupil. If the dark energy was activated, Tang 13 would be in real danger. Thinking of this, Nie Tian frowned uncontrollably. The worry on his face was even more obvious. Rui Qianyu watched from the side, unsure of what to do. Let's leave this place first. Nie Tian thought for a while. He couldn't wait here any longer. He decided to search around. Maybe he could find Tang 13 and the others. The two of them didn't waste any time and walked towards a dense forest. Nie Tian didn't walk fast. At the same time, he activated the holographic glyph to sense his surroundings. After half a day, Nie Tian still hadn't found anything. The worry in his heart intensified. At this moment, Nie Tian seemed to have sensed something, and his tensed face suddenly changed. Rui Qianyu noticed Nie Tian's change in expression. She didn't dare to say anything. She only looked at him with confusion. Nie Tian expanded his divine sense and saw a silhouette sprinting 10,000 meters away. This silhouette was very familiar. It was Tang Yuyu. Tang Yuyu. Nietion's eyes couldn't help but tremble when he saw who it was. He let out a startled cry and dashed forward. Seeing this, Rui Qinyu followed. Tang Yuyu. Nietion's silhouette landed. Looking at a place 1,000 meters away, he shouted in a low voice. Tang Yuyu's sprinting silhouette suddenly stopped. He turned around and saw Nietion. His eyes were shaking and his eyes were wet. Nietion and Rui Qinyu rushed over and saw that Tang Yuyu was crying. Their hearts sank and they asked nervously, Tang Yuyu, what happened? Tang 13 and Tang Yuyu were together, but at this moment, Tang Yuyu was alone. This gave Nietion a bad feeling. Nietion, follow me. Tang Yuyu calmed down and didn't explain too much. He turned around and ran in a direction. The three figures were like the wind and lightning, flying at top speed. Soon, they arrived outside a hidden valley. Nietion looked around. This was one of the hiding spots that he and Tang 13 had scouted. 13 is inside the valley, Tang Yuyu said before charging into the valley. Be careful. Right at this moment, Nietion suddenly cried out. Roar! Almost at the same time, a low growl came from the sky. Then, a giant silhouette pounced out. Its sharp claws shone coldly under the night sky as it clawed at Tang Yuyu. Nietion's eyes narrowed. Without hesitation, he stabbed out with his sword and cut the giant silhouette into two. His eyes darkened as he looked at the corpse on the ground. It was a giant black wolf that was around 7 to 8 meters long. Tang Yuyu was stunned. She didn't know where this giant wolf came from, but she didn't think too much about it. She then dashed into the valley. Come back! Right at this moment, Nietion suddenly stepped forward and pulled Tang Yuyu back. Tang Yuyu was stunned. She turned around and looked at Nietion with a puzzled expression. In the next moment, countless green dots of light surged out of the valley and surrounded Nietion and the others. What is this? Tang Yuyu was shocked. She had never seen these strange green dots of light before. It's the eyes of a black wolf, Nietion said in a low voice. His face was tense and he couldn't help but feel nervous. The flashing green dots of light were the eyes of a black wolf. The black wolf was the first to pounce but was killed by Nietion with one slash. Tang Yuyu, is Tang 13 in the valley? Nietion's eyes glittered as he asked in a deep voice. Yes. Tang Yuyu nodded and said in a hurry, It was 13 who brought me to this valley. He told me to find you. Is he hurt? Nietion frowned and continued to ask. Tang Yuyu's beautiful eyes flickered and she said, His eyes are bleeding. They are bleeding nonstop. I have never seen him like this. Nietion's heart sank. What he was most worried about had happened. The dark energy in Tang 13's ghost I was acting up. You guys step back. I will go and save Tang 13. Nietion turned around and glanced at Rui Qinyu. He signaled her and Tang Yuyu to step back. Rui Qinyu nodded and understood. Nietion's eyes were telling her that if she was in danger, she could use the rainbow pupils. You animals, get out of my way! After Rui Qinyu and Tang Yuyu retreated to a safe place, Nietion growled. His eyes were filled with killer's intent. The black wolves felt Nietion's chi and killer's intent. However, they didn't back off. Instead, they surrounded them. You are seeking death, Nietion bellowed. Immediately, a terrifying sword aura surged from his body as he thrust his sword forward. A sword shadow that was hundreds of meters long whizzed out. Sword light poured down like a waterfall of light, surging violently. The sword landed and killed more than 10 black wolves. The entire place was filled with blood, and the smell of blood filled the air. Nietion was desperate to save the wolves. Therefore, he used the 3 demonic sword vein, which was extremely lethal. He originally thought that this strike of his would surely be able to deter the black wolves and make them retreat in the face of difficulties. However, he didn't expect that the wolves' green moos would flicker and become more violent. Howl! The pack of wolves threw their heads back and howled as they pounced on Nietion at the same time. Nietion frowned and went blank for a moment. Watch out! Rui Qianyu and Tang Yuyu screamed at the same time. Nie Tian stepped on the ground and flew up. At the same time, a fire beacon crossbow appeared in his hand. The moth dragon's heavenly flame was injected into the crossbow. Countless fire arrows were shot out and filled the air. Pung pung pung. In the next moment, countless muffled sounds and miserable howls sounded one after another. The huge black wolves were set ablaze and instantly turned into ashes. The scene in front of them was extremely tragic and bloody. The moment Nie Tian landed, the wolves in front of him decreased by half. The arrow from the fire beacon crossbow killed at least a few hundred black wolves. Nie Tian didn't want to do that. He didn't use the fire beacon crossbow at first. Instead, he stabbed with his sword to frighten the wolves and force them to retreat. These black wolves were all divine beasts. Although their levels weren't high, they had high intelligence. They would definitely escape in the face of danger. However, it was a pity that Nie Tian's sword made the pack of wolves go berserk. The next scene made Nie Tian even more shocked. The fire beacon crossbow killed hundreds of black wolves, but the wolves still didn't retreat. Instead, they pressed forward again. Their green eyes released an extremely bloody aura. Nie Tian frowned and looked confused. These black wolves seemed to have gone crazy. They knew that they couldn't defeat Nie Tian, but they still rushed forward to die. There was definitely something strange about this. Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly. He immediately discovered something strange. He felt a terrifying power surging in the black wolves' bodies. It was this power that made the black wolves so violent. Chapter 1727. The power within these black wolves. Nie Tian's eyes flickered and his face darkened when he sensed the dark aura surging within the black wolves' bodies. It was the dark energy that made the wolf pack go crazy and rush over. Could it be that these wolves escaped from the forbidden land of the nine-headed infant? Nie Tian guessed in his heart. But he didn't think this guess was credible. The black wolves were too weak. The forbidden ground of the 9 infants shouldn't have such weak mythological beasts. Roar! At this moment, the pack of wolves once again let out a deep roar and pounced on Nie Tian. At this moment, Nie Tian clearly sensed that the dark aura within Black Wolf's body surged even more violently, and his dark green eyes turned slightly blood-red. Without hesitation, he fired the fire beacon crossbow. Fire arrows rained down on the wolves like a storm. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of black wolves died on the spot. They were drowned in the flames and turned into ashes. Rui Qianyu and Tang Yuyu watched from the side with fear. Nie Tian killed almost 1,000 black wolves in an instant. This was too scary. Nie Tian let out a long breath and put away the fire beacon crossbow. Without the fire beacon crossbow, it wouldn't have been easy to kill so many black wolves. 13. Tang Yuyu reacted at this time and screamed. Then, his figure flashed and he rushed towards the valley. Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu followed him into the valley. After stepping into the valley, Nie Tian felt something was wrong. The air was filled with dark energy and the entire valley was shrouded in darkness. Tang 13. Tang Yuyu didn't pay attention to anything else. Seeing Tang 13 lying on the ground, he hurried over. Watch out! Just then, Nie Tian felt something was wrong and shouted. Boom! Almost at the same time, Tang 13's body shook. A ray of black light shot out like a sharp knife towards Tang Yuyu. Nie Tian reacted quickly. His figure flashed and pulled Tang Yuyu back, but he himself was struck in the shoulder by the black light. A bloody wound appeared and blood flowed out violently. In the blink of an eye, Nie Tian felt a strange and evil force surging into his body, as though it was devouring all of his meridians and blood. Greatly alarmed, Nie Tian hurriedly released the power of the fiend god, and forcibly forced out the evil power. Nie Tian, are you alright? Rui Qianyu and Tang Yuyu were shocked at the same time and asked in astonishment. I'm fine. Nie Tian shook his head slightly and glanced at the wound on his shoulder. It was already slowly healing. What is going on? Tang Yuyu calmed down a little. Looking at Tang 13 on the ground, he asked in shock. Tang 13 was lying flat on the ground. Her body was surrounded by a dark energy. She looked like a dark abyss. Nie Tian stepped forward and felt the energy from Tang 13's body. His expression turned serious. Inside Tang 13's body, there was an extremely frightening dark energy that was surging. It kept attacking inside his body. Right now, Tang 13 was in a coma. Otherwise, this would be an unbearable pain. It was obvious that the dark energy in his eyes was acting up and spreading throughout his body. The situation was more serious than Nie Tian expected. Tang Yuyu, what happened to you? Nie Tian became cold and asked in a low voice. Tang Yuyu's eyes flickered. Holding back her tears, she began to explain. It turned out that Tang 13 and Tang Yuyu ran into other people and started fighting. Tang 13 had no choice but to use the eye of the ghost stare, which caused the dark energy to act up. Tang 13 brought Tang Yuyu to this valley and felt that the dark energy was getting out of control. She told Tang Yuyu to go find Nie Tian. Fat, what do we do now? Nie Tian inhaled deeply. He knew nothing about dark energy and didn't know what to do. He could only ask Fat Cat. I don't know either. Fat Cat's expression was serious as she shook her head. That dark energy is too strong. In merely a few days, it has grown to this extent. I'm afraid that even if you can bring it into the forbidden ground of the 9 infants, it will be too late. With Fat Cat's personality, if there was a way, it would have appeared a long time ago. Nie Tian's eyes widened and his expression turned ugly. What did Fat Cat mean by it was too late? Was he going to watch Tang 13 get swallowed by the dark energy? No. Nie Tian's eyes were shaking and he screamed internally. He could not watch Tang 13 get swallowed by the dark energy. Nie Tian's body moved. Starry energy poured out of his body and formed a starry shield that wrapped around Tang 13. Then, Nie Tian carried Tang 13 on his back. He sensed for a moment. Tang 13's energy was steady and was even getting stronger. However, it was getting darker and creepier. Nie Tian, what are you doing? Tang Yuyu was startled. He didn't know what Nie Tian wanted to do. Follow me. Nie Tian didn't explain much. He said in a low voice and started running. Though he had the starry shield, Nie Tian could still feel waves of dark energy rushing into his body. He could only use the strength of the devil to resist. After running for a few thousand meters, Nie Tian's forehead was covered in sweat. The dark energy was too scary. Resisting the dark energy was a huge burden on Nie Tian. I can't go on like this, Nie Tian thought to himself. He wanted to go to the forbidden ground of the 9 infants, but he was dozens of meters away from the forbidden ground. With such a long distance, he was afraid that he would be swallowed by the dark energy before he arrived. The power of the dark energy was extremely creepy. The strength of the devil could barely resist it. The key was that Nie Tian had only awakened 32 strength of the devil. He couldn't use the full power of the strength of the devil. Nie Tian, are you okay? Rui Qinyu saw that Nie Tian was covered in cold sweat and couldn't help but ask worriedly. I'm fine, Nie Tian responded. He had to bring Tang 13 to the forbidden ground of the 9 infants. Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance, he wouldn't give up. Nie Tian, be careful. Just then, Fat Cat suddenly screamed. Huh! Nie Tian suddenly raised his head. His eyes narrowed and he couldn't help but tremble. Boom! Crack, crack, crack! In midair, a huge black ice pillar appeared and pressed down on Nie Tian. Everywhere the ice pillar passed, the space was frozen. Damn it! Seeing this, Nie Tian let out a low roar and stabbed out with his sword. A sword shadow rose up against the force of the attack. The sword light shot out for 1,000 meters. Boom! The ice pillar and the sword shadow collided. A loud explosion sounded, but the sword shadow was directly shattered. The huge ice pillar pressed down on Nie Tian. Oh no! Nie Tian's heart sank. Astral energy surged around his body and condensed into an astral shield. Chapter 1728. The sudden scene caused both Raindrop Qianye and Tang Yu to stare blankly for a moment before they exclaimed, "Nia Tian! Nia Tian, is it?" Right at this time, a black-robed figure appeared in midair. The corner of his mouth curved into a cold smile as he spoke, taking the Ice Devil's attack head-on. "He will die without a doubt. It's you." Rui Qianyu raised her head to look at the figure in the air. Her eyes glimmered as she exclaimed in surprise. The black-robed figure was none other than the Bing family's young lord, Bing Ju. At this time, the Ice Devil's aura around Bing Ju was much stronger than before. Terrifying frigid energy surged around his body, freezing the space behind him. Rui Qianyu stared at Bing Ju. Her eyes glimmered as if a strange light would gush out from them in the next moment. Rui Qianyu was going to use her 9-color pupils. "Qianye, don't be rash." Right at this time, a familiar voice rang in the air. The giant boulder shook and exploded. A blood-colored figure stepped out from the boulder and stood there. "Nia Tian." Rui Qianyu saw Nia Tian's figure. Her eyes trembled and a warm feeling surged in them. "I'm fine." Nia Tian smiled faintly. He turned around to look at Tang 13. The latter was uninjured. Nia Tian took the brunt of the attack head-on. Moreover, Tang 13 was protected by the astral shield. In addition to the darkness element aura surrounding Tang 13, she wasn't injured. On the other hand, Nia Tian's body was a bloody mess. It was a terrifying sight to behold. However, the injuries he suffered were merely flesh wounds. His origin meridians and godheads weren't damaged, so it wasn't serious. Bing Ju's sudden appearance caught Nia Tian off guard. On top of that, he was carrying Tang 13 on his back. His strength was suppressed by the darkness element aura, which was why he was injured by Bing Ju. How is this possible? Bing Ju's figure hovered in midair. His body swayed uncontrollably, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. He had never imagined that Nia Tian's strength would be so strong that he would only suffer some light injuries after being hit by the Ice Devil's power head-on. "Bing Ju, enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road." Nia Tian's body shook as he shook off the blood stains on his body. His eyes flashed with a cold light. He did not expect to meet Bing Ju here. He was in a hurry to save Tang 13. If Ju Bing continued, he would be forced to kill Tang 13. "Nia Tian, you don't have any more Ice Demon silk on you. Are you afraid?" Bing Ju calmed down and smiled coldly. The killing intent in his eyes was extremely dense. "The demonic ice silk is in my hands. If you want revenge, come at me." Right at this moment, a voice rang out in the distance before a figure descended. It was Gui Wuchan. "We meet again, Nia Tian." Looking towards Nia Tian, Gui Wuchan gave a faint smile. Nia Tian forced a smile and immediately understood. So Gui Wuchan was nearby. No wonder Bing Ju would appear. "Do you think you deserve to own something like the demonic ice silk?" Bing Ju was stunned at first, then he looked at Gui Wuchan and spoke in a deep voice. He did not take Gui Wuchan seriously at all, thinking that the latter was just a small fry following by Nia Tian's side. Gui Wuchan sneered. Without looking at Bing Ju, he said to Nia Tian, "Nia Tian, go and do your own thing. Leave this guy to me." Nia Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He carried Tang 13 on his back, then glanced at Gui Wuchan and reminded, "He's very strong. You have to be careful." Nia Tian did not want to be entangled with Bing Ju any longer. With Bing Ju's strength, if he wanted to kill him, he would have to use the 3 great forbidden skills. As for Nia Tian, he wanted to enter the forbidden ground of 9 infants, so he had to use the 3 great forbidden skills to deal with the guardians of the forbidden ground. He knew that the guardians of the forbidden ground were much scarier than Bing Ju, but the forbidden ground of 9 infants was his only chance to save Tang 13. He had to give it his all. "Don't worry." Gui Wuchan smiled faintly, appearing very confident. "You want to fight me with just you?" Ridiculous. Bingju looked at Gui Wusan coldly and sneered. Then he moved and slapped out with his palm. Numerous ice blades appeared in the air and slammed towards Gui Wusan like sharp swords. Underestimating the ghost martial devil style is the biggest mistake you made. Gui Wusan sneered in a deep voice. A black longsword appeared in his hand, and the sword aura around him surged. With a thrust of the sword, a black skull formed from sword will appeared in the air. What a strong sword will! Feeling the sword aura from Gui Wusan's body, Nie Tian could not help but tremble and exclaim in his heart. This was the first time Gui Wusan showed his strength, and it was much stronger than Nie Tian had imagined. Gui Wusan's sword cultivation had actually reached the essence of sword realm, and there were even signs of him breaking through to the realm of sword selflessness. The disciple of Gui Wu Kuangsha is indeed not simple. Nie Tian was extremely surprised and thought to himself, since Gui Wu Kuangsha and the Sword Elder were known as the Southern Gui Wu Bei Qing Qi, there was no doubt that his strength was strong. Gui Wusan was the disciple of Gui Wu Kuangsha, so of course he was not simple. Knowing Gui Wusan's strength, Nie Tian hesitated no more. Then he moved and prepared to leave. Bang! The moment the black skull appeared, a muffled sound was heard. Bingju's body was directly sent flying. The frozen space behind him collapsed inch by inch, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Brat you! Bingju steadied himself, and his eyes trembled violently. His face was extremely ugly. How could he have expected Gui Wusan to be so strong? However, the palm strike just now was just a probing attack. Next, he would have to take this opponent seriously. On the other side, Nie Tian's body moved, and he wanted to leave. But at this moment, he suddenly felt a strong aura appear, and his face sank. Nie Tian's body paused, and he signaled Rui Qianyu and Tang Yuyu to retreat. The latter two had a blank look on their faces, and they still did not know what was going on. Stay here. At this moment, a violent roar sounded in the void, and then a figure in black appeared. He directly slammed his palm down, and the majestic palm's shadow was like a mountain, rolling down, and directly smashed towards Nie Tian. It's that guy! Nie Tian felt a familiar aura, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble. He cried out in his heart, and at the same time, he opened the tri-evil sword vein in his body, and stabbed out with his sword. The surging sword shadow rose against the sky. Boom! In the next moment, the palm and the sword collided, and the void shook violently. A terrifying aura descended, forcing Nie Tian to retreat 100 meters. The ground rumbled, and a huge pit with a radius of 100 meters appeared. The ground around it was torn apart. Duan Tianhen. Nie Tian steadied himself, looked at the black-clothed figure in midair, and called out his name in a deep voice. The person who suddenly appeared was actually Duan Tianhen, the person who possessed the fifth seal. The two people that Nie Tian did not want to meet the most were Lai Yin Jiufeng and Duan Tianhen. He never thought that Duan Tianhen would appear at this time. Chapter 1729. Duan Tianhen suddenly appeared, glaring at Nie Tian and the others with murderous intent. His aura roiled, and the black symbols on his body radiated a terrifying, violent aura. Nie Tian narrowed his eyes. He hadn't expected Duan Tianhen to show up at a time like this. Looking at Duan Tianhen's posture, it was obvious that he had come in a domineering manner, intending to kill. Nie Tian put Tang 13 on the ground. If he wanted to leave, he had to defeat Duan Tianhen first. You're Nie Tian, right? Duan Tianhen lowered himself slightly, and the ultimate wind-lightning seal around him grew stronger. Thunder rumbled in the air, and the space around him grew darker and darker. It was a suffocating pressure. So what if I am? Nie Tianling replied coldly. 32 streams of devil god power surged inside of him, and he opened his tri-evil sword vein. Duan Tianhen was an even more terrifying opponent than absolute ice. He had to go all out. You know Lai Yin Jiufeng, right? Duan Tianhen said with a cold smile. Too bad he's not here right now. You're dead. Is that so? Nie Tian growled. Without another word, he stabbed out with his sword. Sword light blossomed in the air, and a sharp sword shadow shot toward Duan Tianhen. Duan Tianhen laughed in disdain. After that, he released the heavenly wind lightning imprint and slammed out with his palm. His black claws were like collapsing dark clouds, directly devouring the sword images in the air. Frowning, Nie Tian summoned his astral soul wings and dodged the deadly attack. Rumble! The terrifying palm slammed into the ground, causing it to tremble and explode. A wave of dirt rose into the air. Nie Tian swept his sword through the dirt, but blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. Duan Tianhen was an early paramount god, 2 whole realms higher than Nie Tian. Add the ultimate wind lightning seal to the fact that it could resist the restrictions, and he was strong. Humph! Duan Tianhen smiled disdainfully after injuring Nie Tian with a single palm strike. He declared loudly, Nie Tian, you may be in cahoots with Lai Yin Jiufeng, but you're far weaker than him. Duan Tianhen didn't think much of Nie Tian at all. In his opinion, Lai Yin Jiufeng was the only one who could fight him among all the participants of the 9 neonate forbidden hunt. Really? Nie Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth as an evil light flashed in his eyes. His body shook as terrifying black runes began to emit from his body. It was the dragon inscription talisman. Duan Tianhen was too strong. Without using the 3 forbidden techniques, Nie Tian was no match for him. Duan Tianhen stared at the black runes around Nie Tian's body, and his eyes couldn't help but tighten. Then, he laughed coldly and said disdainfully, Looks like you still have a trump card. Unfortunately, in front of me, no matter how strong your trump card is, there's only one word for you, death. After activating the dragon inscription talisman, Nie Tian's strength began to skyrocket. The aura around him also became extremely violent. He didn't use all 3 forbidden techniques, but only the dragon inscription talisman. He wasn't looking down on Duan Tianhen, but he had to conserve his strength because he still had to bring Tang 13 into the forbidden ground of the 9 neonate. Starry heavenly slash, blood devours the heavens. In the next moment, Nie Tian raised his strength to the extreme, advancing from the early high god realm to the late high god realm. As he let out a deep roar, the starry heaven slash burst forth with dazzling sword light. Surging sword intent was filled with a terrifyingly surging blood aura. The increase in strength brought about by the 3 forbidden techniques also allowed Nie Tian to awaken more of his fiend god energy. This increased his resistance against martial arts restrictions. Boom! 1,000-meter-long blood-colored sword shadow appeared in the air. Its majestic aura engulfed heaven and earth, devouring everything in its path. Duan Tianhen's eyes flickered when he felt the power of Nie Tian's sword. He was extremely surprised. He didn't expect Nie Tian's strength to be so terrifying. However, he didn't panic. Instead, he let out a low roar, celestial wind and thunder, 5 thunders. As Duan Tianhen let out a furious roar, he struck out with his palm. Terrifying black thunderbolts of the martial way actually appeared in the void. They were like 5 huge black snakes, surging in the space and blasting towards the huge sword in the sky. Rumble! Chi chi chi! The 2 forces collided, and a deafening tearing sound was heard in the air. The 5 giant black snakes wrapped around the giant sword, and suddenly tightened their grip. Boom! Boom! After 2 loud explosions, the giant sword shadow suddenly collapsed. The 5 black thunders also exploded at the same time. The terrifying power wreaked havoc in the space, causing the heaven and earth to shake. When Rui Qianyu and the others saw this scene, their eyes trembled violently. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that this battle would be so intense. After a long time, the violent power dissipated. 2 figures appeared in the air. It was Duan Tianhen and Nye Tian. The two stood in the air, black runes surging around them. They looked bloody and violent. Nye Tian, I didn't expect you to be so strong. You are strong enough to be my opponent. Duan Tianhen smiled cold. He looked at Nye Tian with a fierce gaze, but at the same time, there was a hint of fear. Nye Tian's strength had far exceeded his expectations. He finally understood why Lai Yanjiufeng valued Nye Tian so much. Nye Tian's expression was dark. He didn't respond. His strength was far greater than this, but he didn't want to use it now. If he used the three great forbidden skills at the same time, he wouldn't be able to bring Tang 13 into the 9 infants forbidden land. Duan Tianhen, I'll give you one last warning. Don't block my way. Nye Tian glanced at Tang 13. He couldn't help but panic when he felt the dark aura in the latter's body grow more and more violent. He locked his gaze on Duan Tianhen and said solemnly. Duan Tianhen's gaze focused. Nye Tian's killing intent shocked him. He could even feel an even more terrifying power hidden in Nye Tian's body. In that instant, Duan Tianhen hesitated. Nye Tian made him feel true fear. Brother Duan, kill this brat. At this time, Bing Ju's voice sounded on the other side. He sounded very eager. Nye Tian stilled. Only then did he realize that Duan Tianhen and Bing Ju knew each other. The two clearly didn't come from the same subsidiary world. They must have met after the 9 infants forbidden hunt began. Judging from Duan Tianhen's reaction, the two seemed to have made some kind of deal. Nye Tian, you're a very good opponent. If I step aside now, wouldn't it be too disappointing? Duan Tianhen's flickering gaze suddenly became resolute. His eyes were dripping with killing intent. Clearly, he wasn't going to step aside. Since that's the case, don't blame me. Nye Tian's eyes suddenly narrowed. Then, his deep voice resounded in the night sky. It was extremely eerie. In the next moment, even more terrifying forbidden skill runes surged out of his body. They surged around his body. His entire being seemed extremely evil. His entire body radiated with killing intent. This time, Nye Tian didn't hold back. He activated the 3 great forbidden skill runes at the same time. As the Forbidden Dragon Bloodline and Forbidden Dragon Soulbone were activated, Nye Tian's aura skyrocketed. In the blink of an eye, his strength had skyrocketed from late-stage High God to early-stage Over God. Chapter 1730. How is this possible? Duan Tianhen stared at Nye Tian in midair. His eyes could not help but tremble. He was shocked. Nye Tian's strength had exploded from early High God to early Over God. He had risen by an entire realm. Duan Tianhen could not understand what the black runes in Nye Tian's body were. How could they possess such a strange power that could instantly increase his strength? Duan Tianhen felt a little regretful at this moment. His determined gaze became hesitant. He had underestimated Nye Tian far too much. He even felt that Nye Tian was an even more terrifying opponent than Lai Yanjiufeng. On the other side, Bing Ju and Gui Wushan were stunned as well. They stared blankly at Nye Tian in midair. The shock in their hearts was written all over their faces. Gui Wushan knew that Nye Tian was powerful, but he did not expect him to be this powerful. It was too terrifying. Bing Ju's expression was extremely ugly. His mouth was wide open, but he could not say anything. If he had known that Nye Tian was this powerful, he would have reconsidered whether or not to avenge the Bing family. But it was too late to say anything now. Nye Tian had activated his 3 forbidden arts. There was no way he would let Duan Tianhen and the others leave alive. Prepare to die. Nye Tian's gaze was vicious and bloodthirsty. His deep voice rang through the air like a death knell from hell. It was chilling. Nye Tian's sword momentum soared into the sky. His sword intent surged, and his blood chi surged. Hovering in midair, he looked like a blood-weeping sword that could pierce through heaven and earth, exuding a terrifying aura of blood. Right now, Nie Tian was a sword that killed. Starlight heavenly slash, God-destroying strike, world incinerator. Nie Tian raised his sword and murmured. Terrifying sword intent instantly condensed. A huge blood-colored sword appeared in the air. It slashed down at Duan Tianhen like a scarlet dragon. The power of this sword shook the heavens and the earth, destroying everything in its path. Duan Tianhen's eyes trembled. He was actually shocked by Nie Tian's aura. He stood there motionlessly, completely forgetting to resist. With his strength, if he pushed the heavenly wind lightning seal to the limit, he might be able to receive this sword. Unfortunately, he was afraid. Faced with an opponent stronger than him, Duan Tianhen's first reaction was fear. By the time he reacted, he had already lost his best opportunity. No. When Duan Tianhen saw that sword shadow descend, his eyes trembled violently. The fear in his heart was magnified infinitely, and the aura of death made him despair. Hong. The sword image was like a mountain, sweeping up the dark clouds in the sky. It carried with it an absolute killing intent as it descended. If this sword had landed on Duan Tianhen, he would have died without a doubt. When the others saw the horrifying scene in the sky, their eyes became dull, and they were extremely shocked. However, right when Duan Tianhen's life was hanging by a thread, an unexpected event occurred. Whoosh! In the void, a ball of green light whizzed past like the wind and lightning. It enveloped Duan Tianhen and formed a green barrier. In the next moment, the terrifying sword fell, but it passed through Duan Tianhen's body. It actually couldn't break through the green barrier around him. Kaboom! Immediately after, the sword image bombarded the ground. The earth shook and the ground cracked. Everything within a radius of a few thousand meters collapsed, and a wave of soil dozens of meters high rose from the ground. It was as if the end of the world had come. After a long time, the terrifying wave of soil gradually subsided, and the space gradually became clear. Nie Tian's figure stood in midair, but he looked at Duan Tianhen with a burning gaze. Under the protection of the green barrier, Duan Tianhen was actually unharmed. Duan Tianhen stood there, his expression completely blank. He had no idea what had happened. In the next moment, Nie Tian immediately reacted, and he exclaimed in his heart, "The power of the 9-color pupils." Then, he looked into the void. The person who had saved Duan Tianhen at the critical moment had used the power of the 9-color pupils. This clearly wasn't done by Rui Qianyu, and Rui Qianyu's 9-color pupils couldn't possibly be so powerful. It's her. Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and a face appeared in his mind. It was Gao Yuhan. Other than Gao Yuhan, Nie Tian couldn't think of anyone else. Follow me. At this moment, a voice sounded in Nie Tian's mind. It was Gao Yuhan. He was stunned. It was clearly Gao Yuhan who had spoken to him. Indeed, it was Gao Yuhan who had saved Duan Tianhen, but she didn't want to appear. Nie Tian thought for a moment, then he moved and carried Tang 13 on his back. Then, he shouted to Rui Qianyu and Tang Yuyu, "Let's go." Without hesitation, Nie Tian left with Tang 13 and the others. Gui Wuchan was stunned. Seeing that Nie Tian had already left, there was no need for him to stay. He flew in another direction. Only Duan Tianhen and Bingju were left. Their expressions were blank, and they had no idea what had happened. After a long time, Duan Tianhen finally reacted. He gulped, but his expression was still stiff. Even though he had saved his life, he didn't know who it was that had saved him. On the other side, Nie Tian's figure was sprinting. He followed Gao Yuhan's trail and quickly arrived at a hidden valley. "Come in." Gao Yuhan's voice sounded from within the valley. Without hesitation, Nie Tian carried Tang 13 and entered the valley. "Master, it's you." Rui Qianyu and Tang Yuyu didn't know what had happened either. When they entered the valley and saw Gao Yuhan, they couldn't help but scream. "Put him down." Gao Yuhan ignored the two. She looked at Nie Tian and said calmly. Nie Tian placed Tang 13 flat on the ground. The pressure on his body immediately weakened. At this time, the sun had just risen and the sky was getting brighter. Everyone could clearly see the dark energy swirling around Tang 13's body. Her entire body's skin turned dark and was covered in black lines. His life is not in danger now. I will save him. Gao Yuhan didn't waste words. She raised her hand slightly and sent Tang 13 into the cave in the valley. Nie Tian's gaze focused slightly as he stared at Gao Yuhan. He had no choice but to believe her. But he didn't understand why Gao Yuhan would save Duan Tianhen. Speaking of which, this was the second time Gao Yuhan had saved Duan Tianhen. The first time was when Duan Tianhen was about to fight Lai Yin Jiufeng in the arena of life and death. Duan Tianhen has the fifth seal in his body. He cannot die yet. Gao Yuhan knew what Nie Tian was thinking and said indifferently. She didn't explain too much. Nie Tian stilled and then looked at Gao Yuhan. He said solemnly, "Elder, when will you save Tang 13? Nie Tian wasn't interested in why Gao Yuhan would save Duan Tianhen. He only cared about when Gao Yuhan would save Duan Tianhen. It's not time yet. Gao Yuhan glanced at the cave Tang 13 was in. She said, I am not completely confident. I can only take a risk. HM? Nie Tian stilled and asked, What do you want to do? Gao Yuhan's eyes were dark. She said, His ghost eye has already opened to the blood moon ghost eye. He is currently being invaded by the evil energy of Jiuying. If you want to save him, there is only one way. Make his ghost eye mutate. Chapter 1731. Nie Tian looked at Gao Yuhan, confused. Mutating the ghost pupil? This was too strange. Nie Tian knew about mutated spirits, spiritual beasts, and mythical beasts, but mutating the other pupil was something he had never heard of. Gao Yuhan looked at Nie Tian and said in a low voice, The blood moon ghost pupil is very powerful, but it is not enough to fight against the evil energy of the nine-headed snakelet. Therefore, I must stimulate the ghost pupil's potential and mutate it. The evil energy of the nine-headed snakelet. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He just realized that the dark energy was called the evil energy of the nine-headed snakelet. After thinking for a while, Nie Tian asked, Elder, how do you plan to mutate the ghost pupil? Use the power of the rainbow pupil to stimulate the ghost pupil and merge it with the evil energy of the nine-headed snakelet to achieve mutation. Gao Yuhan's eyes were like torches. This. Nie Tian frowned and his face darkened. He said in a trembling voice, The ghost pupil will merge with the evil energy of the nine-headed snakelet. How can you be sure that Tang 13 can handle this power? I cannot be sure. Gao Yuhan was very calm. She looked at the cave again and said, Whether or not he can handle this power will depend on his own strength and willpower. Nie Tian sucked in a breath of cold air. It turned out that Gao Yuhan wasn't confident. Mutating the ghost pupil was actually a gamble. If he won the gamble, Tang 13's ghost pupil would become even more horrifying. But if he lost the gamble, Tang 13 would pay with his life and be completely consumed by the evil energy of the nine-headed snakelet. Nie Tian looked at Gao Yuhan. The latter's eyes were cold and calm. He is your friend. I am only giving you a choice. Whether you want to do it or not, it is up to you. Gao Yuhan looked at Nie Tian and the others and said coldly. Nie Tian and the other two were shocked. They looked at each other hesitantly. Tang 13 was already unconscious. The person who had the most right to make the decision was Tang Yuyu. Yes. Unexpectedly, Tang Yuyu was very decisive. He took a step forward and came to Gao Yuhan's side. He nodded heavily and said, Please save him, Lord Elder. I will try my best. Gao Yuhan nodded, her eyes cold. Nie Tian's eyes trembled. Tang Yuyu's decisiveness surprised him. Tang Yuyu used to be an assassin. Though she had forgotten those memories, she was very calm and could make the right choice in times of danger. At this moment, there was only one option left for Nie Tian and the others, and that was to let Gao Yuhan take a gamble. If Nie Tian forcefully brought Tang 13 into the forbidden land of the nine-headed infant, not to mention whether he would be able to make it in, even if he did, his life would be in danger. If he could, 13, Tian would Tang, Tian, Ling Tian. Elder, let's start the rescue. Nie Tian nodded solemnly. Seeing that Gao Yuhan didn't move, he couldn't help but urge. It is, Tian said. No. Gao Yuhan, no. Nie Tian went blank for a moment. He had thought that since they were going to save people, shouldn't they do it as soon as possible? Gao Yuhan looked out of the valley and seemed to be waiting for something. She said, since we are going to merge the eye of the ghost eye with the evil energy of the nine neonate, we have to wait until the evil energy of the nine neonate is at its most violent. You will know soon. Gao Yuhan smiled. A strange light flashed in her eyes. You'll know soon enough. Gao Yuhan smiled faintly as a strange light flashed in her eyes. You will know soon. Gao Yuhan smiled. A strange light flashed in her eyes. Moments later, Nie Tian suddenly heard muffled rumbles coming from the ground, as if many huge things were running madly towards the valley. After a while, Nie Tian suddenly felt a low rumble from the ground. It was as if many giant things were running towards the valley. It is about time. Apparently, Gao Yuhan had also sensed it. Her eyes slightly darkened as she suddenly asked, Nie Tian, since you've already explored the nine-infant mountain range, have you noticed that all of the divine beasts here have one thing in common? Nie Tian's pupils constricted as he asked in surprise, what's special about it? They're all black. Gao Yuhan's eyes flashed with a trace of strangeness as she said indifferently. Nie Tian's face changed. He nodded. Gao Yuhan was right. All the mythological beasts in the Jiao-Ing mountain range were black. The black tiger that Nie Tian met before, the black wolf pack, and the other mythological beasts were all black. If not for Gao Yuhan's reminder, Nie Tian would not have noticed it. It seemed that the mythological beasts here were smaller. Compared to the mythological beasts of the same rank in the outside world, they were about 10 times smaller. It was strange. Nie Tian, do you know why? Gao Yuhan looked at Nie Tian and asked. Nie Tian was stunned. He thought of something and said, it is because of the evil energy of the Jiao-Ing. Yes. Gao Yuhan nodded. The evil energy of the Jiao-Ing filled the entire Jiao-Ing mountain range. All the mythological beasts here are affected by the evil energy of the Jiao-Ing mountain range. The evil energy has seeped into their bloodlines, so all the mythological beasts are black. So that's how it is. Nie Tian went blank for a moment before realization dawned upon him. Previously, when he was fighting with the Black Wolf Pack, he felt the evil energy of the Jiao-Ing surging in the Black Wolf Pack. It was because of the evil energy that the Wolf Pack went crazy. At this point, Nie Tian couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. All the mythological beasts had the evil energy of the Jiao-Ing mountain range. They were invaded by the evil energy of the Jiao-Ing mountain range. Didn't that mean that the black ball of light in the Jiao-Ing mountain range could control all the mythological beasts through the evil energy of the Jiao-Ing mountain range? Gao Yuhan looked at Nie Tian. She didn't know what he was thinking. She felt the commotion outside the valley and said, the evil energy of the Jiao-Ing 13 was absorbed from the Jiao-Ing demon cocoon. Now that the evil energy of the Jiao-Ing mountain range is getting more and more violent, it will attract many mythological beasts. Nie Tian was stunned, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble. The Black Wolf Pack appeared because they felt the evil energy of the Jiao-Ing mountain range. Nie Tian also knew that the black ball of light in the Jiao-Ing mountain range was called the Jiao-Ing demon cocoon. But Gao Yuhan said that she didn't know what was in the Jiao-Ing mountain range. Maybe she only knew the name of the Jiao-Ing demon cocoon, but didn't know what it was. Boom! At this moment, the cave suddenly shook. A terrifying evil energy of the Jiao-Ing mountain range was released. It was like dark clouds rolling in all directions. Rui Qianyu, come with me. Seeing this scene, Gao Yuhan's eyes slightly trembled. She immediately shouted and said to Nie Tian, Tang Yuyu, the two of you must guard the valley. Don't let anything break in. Okay. Nie Tian and Tang Yuyu nodded solemnly. However, in the next moment, their faces abruptly changed and turned somewhat pale. At this moment, 10,000 meters away from the valley, the ground was shaking. The trees and rocks on the ground were all destroyed. The mythological beasts were rushing over. Chapter 1732. Looking at the horde of beasts outside the valley, Nie Tian couldn't help but gasp. Only now did he realize that this was not only a test for Tang 13, but also a test for him. While Gao Yuhan was helping Tang 13 with the mutation of the ghost eye, Nie Tian and Tang Yuyu had to stop the horde of beasts. Rumble! Thousands of beasts charged forward, shaking the surroundings. The earth rumbled and the entire valley shook violently, as if it was about to collapse. From afar, Nie Tian could see balls of terrifying dark aura surging above the horde of beasts. It was the evil energy of Jiuying. Tang Yuyu, step back! Nie Tian growled. His eyes suddenly became fierce, and he ordered Tang Yuyu to retreat to the innermost part of the valley. The first wave of attack from the horde of beasts was undoubtedly the strongest. Nie Tian had to stop it. The horde of beasts got closer and closer. Their overwhelming aura filled the air. 5,000 meters. 3,000 meters. 1,000 meters. Seeing that the horde of beasts was about to charge into the valley, Nie Tian suddenly moved. The 3 forbidden runes in his body surged out. At the same time, he activated the 3 evils sword seal. His strength rose to the early stage of the over-god realm. He released all the power of the demons and god. The 9 dragon veins also revolved crazily, releasing waves of terrifying dragon energy. Sword sealing forbidden formation, world-devouring sword dragon. Nie Tian stomped on the ground and leaped into the air. His blood aura surged violently, clashing with the terrifying sword intent and dragon aura. Then, the power of the spell formation condensed in an instant, and a 2,000-meter-long sword dragon appeared in midair and charged toward the horde of beasts. Seeing this, Tang Yuyu was completely stunned. Her little mouth opened, but she couldn't make a sound. It was hard to imagine that Nie Tian's strength had reached such a level. Under the pressure of the martial prohibition formation, Nie Tian was able to explode with such terrifying power. His strength was unimaginable. Roar! The sword dragon flew through the air, and the earth-shattering roar of the dragon filled the air. The void trembled and the space trembled. Then, the terrifying aura pressed down crazily, colliding with the aura of 10,000 beasts. Boom! In the void, 2 terrifying auras collided. Space suddenly stagnated, as though time and space had stopped. In the next moment, boundless waves of air exploded and transformed into waves of terrifying impact force that swept out in all directions. The cliffs and boulders outside the valley were all shattered. Terrifying waves of air surged in the air, causing sand and stones to fly everywhere. Nie Tian stood in midair. Feeling the violent impact, his body trembled and he was sent flying, leaving a trail of blood in the air. Nie Tian. Seeing this, Tang Yuyu couldn't help but exclaim. Her beautiful eyes couldn't help but tremble. The power of 10,000 beasts was too strong. Even if Nie Tian gave it his all, he was still slightly inferior. Nie Tian had already used all his strength. The pressure that his martial body had to withstand was immense. In addition, he had to withstand the terrifying impact head-on. Of course, he was unable to resist. Bang! His body, like a lead bullet, smashed into the side of the cliff and sunk deep into the ground. Nie Tian. Rui Qianyu was inside the cave. Witnessing this scene, she couldn't help but scream. Don't be distracted. He won't die. Gao Yuhan glared at Rui Qianyu and scolded in a low voice. By now, they were preparing to use their 9-color eyes to stimulate the eye of the ghost eye. This process was extremely dangerous. One moment of distraction and Tang 13's life could be lost. Gao Yuhan and Rui Qianyu would be in danger as well. In the next second, before Gao Yuhan's voice faded, Nie Tian walked out from the cliff. Though he was covered in blood, his breathing was steady and his eyes were sharp. It was obvious that his life was not in danger. Nie Tian took a step forward, looked at Raindrop Thousand Leaves, and said in a grim voice, "I'm fine, Thousand Leaves. Just focus on saving Tang 13. Okay." Rui Qianyu nodded heavily. She let out a long breath and began to focus on what was in front of her. Nie Tian stood in midair and stared at the beast horde in front of him. He mumbled, "These animals sure are strong. 10,000 beasts gallop." Their combined force was, of course, very strong. Luckily, Nie Tian wasn't weak. Though he was injured, he was able to block the first wave of attack. To be able to block 10,000 beasts by himself, Nie Tian's capabilities were truly shocking. The beast horde gathered outside of the valley. They were very agitated, but they didn't rush in. Nie Tian looked into the cave. Gao Yuhan and Rui Qianyu had already begun to infuse the power of the rainbow pupils into the eye of the ghost eye. The evil energy of the nine-headed snakelet became even more violent. At the same time, the beast horde outside of the valley felt the evil energy of the nine-headed snakelet and became agitated. They let out violent roars. "You animals, I want to see which one of you dares to be the first to die." Nie Tian stepped out and landed at the entrance of the valley. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Just like that, he blocked the entrance of the valley, one man holding the pass against 10,000 enemies. Roar. Finally, a giant black wolf couldn't take it anymore. It was the first to attack. Its 10-meter-long body leaped up and pounced at Nie Tian. One sword die. Nie Tian didn't even look at it. The starry sky flashed and the shadow of the sword flew by. The giant wolf was cut in half and died on the spot. Right now, Nie Tian had activated all 3 forbidden techniques and was in a berserk state. Even if these beasts attacked him together, he wasn't afraid. He was the gate of death for these beasts. Every one that came would die. The strongest wave of attack from the beast horde was the first wave. Nie Tian blocked the first wave and was basically out of danger. However, he couldn't maintain this state for long. He could only hope that Gao Yuhan and Rui Qianyu could help Tang 13 complete the mutation of the Eye of the Ghost Eye. Immediately afterwards, countless god beasts charged madly towards Nie Tian, but all of them died under his sword. At the entrance of the valley, sword rays flashed and the air was bloody. The power of the beasts was about to pile up and block the entrance. Inside the cave, Gao Yuhan and Rui Qianyu released the power of their 9-color eyes. They slowly poured into the eye of the ghost eye and stimulated it. During this process, Gao Yuhan was the main force while Rui Qianyu only played a supporting role. Rui Qianyu felt the power of Gao Yuhan's 9-color eyes at such a close distance. She was shocked. She could feel that Gao Yuhan's power was much stronger than hers. It was hundreds or even thousands of times stronger. Rui Qianyu already had 5 eyes. She guessed that Gao Yuhan had at least 7 or 8 eyes. It was even possible that she had all 9 eyes. She had always wanted to ask Gao Yuhan how she resisted the power of the 9-color eyes. However, she felt that this was Gao Yuhan's secret and she couldn't reveal it to others. At this moment, as the power of the 9-color eyes continued to pour in, the eye of the ghost eye started to change. It started to release waves of strange power. If one looked closely, they would notice that the power of the eye of the ghost eye had changed slightly. It became darker and more evil. Chapter 1733. Eye power was a very special power. It was different from elemental energy and also different from bright spirit power. Elemental energy was a lower level than bright spirit power. However, as a warrior grew stronger, elemental energy would gradually transform into bright spirit power. But eye power was different. No matter how strong a warrior was, power would only increase. Perhaps there would be some slight changes to the elemental energy, but it would never transform into another power. Different elemental eye powers could affect each other. The rainbow pupil was the strangest of the other eyes because it actually had 9 pupils. Each pupil had a different elemental attribute. This was very scary. Gao Yuhan used the variable elemental attributes of the rainbow pupil to stimulate the dark ghost pupil and make it merge with the evil energy of the 9-headed snakelet. Of all the other eyes, only the ghost pupil could merge with the evil energy of the 9-headed snakelet. This was because the 2 elemental attributes were both dark and dark. The ghost pupil slowly released its eye power and slowly merged with the evil energy of the 9-headed snakelet. Gao Yuhan's face was calm, but she was very nervous. She did not know what would happen after the ghost pupil merged with the evil energy of the 9-headed snakelet. If the power was too strong, then Tang 13's ghost pupil would be destroyed. If it was serious, then he would lose his life. As the ghost pupil started to merge with the evil energy of the 9-headed snakelet, the beasts outside the valley began to calm down. They were no longer as violent as before. Phew! Nie Tian let out a long breath of turbid air, his expression somewhat relaxed. If the beasts continued to charge, he would not be able to hold on much longer. Seeing that the beasts had stabilized, Nie Tian's aura dissipated and his strength returned to normal. His face, however, was pale as paper. He had used too much energy and was at the end of his rope. Nie Tian, are you okay? Tang Yuyu stepped forward and asked anxiously. Nie Tian forced a smile and swallowed a divine pill. His complexion improved a little and he said, I just used too much energy. I will be fine after some rest. 3 forbidden skills, 3 evil sword range, and self-igniting blood. Even though Nie Tian had the chaotic original coffin, he would need to rest for days to fully recover. Moreover, the 3 forbidden techniques consumed a lot of energy, and the forbidden technique runes needed a long time to recover. If Nie Tian activated the 3 forbidden techniques again, he probably wouldn't be as powerful as before. Moreover, the frequent use of the 3 great forbidden techniques would cause the forbidden technique runes to increase very slowly. At this time, Nie Tian's forbidden rune was only at the low mystic rank. It was still far from the peak of the high heaven rank. Nie Tian looked at the beast horde outside the valley and secretly sealed the chaotic flame in the fire beacon crossbow. If something unexpected happened, he could immediately use the crossbow to deal with it. At this moment, as the aura of Jiu Ying's evil energy weakened, the herd of beasts began to retreat. After a while, the horde of beasts had already disappeared, leaving only countless corpses of divine beasts piled up outside the valley entrance. Nie Tian took a deep breath, and his expression finally relaxed. He took a step forward and entered the cave. At this time, the evil energy of Jiu Ying around Tang 13 was very little. The remaining evil energy began to slowly flow into the eye of the ghost eye. Nie Tian looked at Gao Yuhan and Rui Qinyu. Both of them were bleeding from the corner of their eyes. It was obvious that they had overused their ocular powers. Are you guys okay? Nie Tian was very nervous and asked in a low voice. We're fine. We'll be fine after some rest. Gao Yuhan nodded slightly and looked at Tang 13. The eye of the ghost eye has already been infused with the evil energy of Jiu Ying. No one knows what will happen to the eye of the ghost eye. We can only wait for him to wake up. Nie Tian nodded and hastily expressed his gratitude. Yes. Many thanks, Elder. From the looks of it, everything was going well. They just had to wait for Tang 13 to wake up. No need to thank me. I have done all this for a price. Gao Yuhan looked at Nie Tian and said coldly. Nie Tian froze and asked directly, Elder, what do you want me to do for you? Now is not the time. When the time is right, I will tell you. Gao Yuhan's expression was cold. You just need to remember that I saved your friend. That's enough. Nie Tian was confused. He couldn't guess what Gao Yuhan was thinking. You guys go rest. I will stay here and watch over him. Gao Yuhan didn't explain too much and said in a low voice. Nie Tian nodded. He didn't hesitate and walked to a narrow corner of the cave. He sat in a lotus position and began to recover his body. He really did need to rest. Only when his energy recovered can his fighting abilities return to their peak. For the next few days, Nie Tian rested and trained hard. What surprised him was that Tang 13 had been unconscious for days and hadn't woken up. Still not awake? Inside the cave, Nie Tian stood up. He had recovered to his peak condition, but Tang 13 was still unconscious. Nie Tian really didn't think that the mutation of the ghost eye would take so long. Don't rush. The longer he's unconscious, the stronger the fusion between the ghost eye and the evil energy of the nine-headed snakelet. Gao Yuhan spoke softly, but she was nervous. This was because she knew that the stronger the fusion of the ghost eye with the evil energy of Jiuying, the greater the danger Tang 13 would face. Tang 13 was too weak right now. If she couldn't handle this power, it would be bad. Nie Tian felt Tang 13's breathing. It was very stable, so he wasn't too worried. Another 2 days passed. Why hasn't he woken up? Gao Yuhan stared at Tang 13, unable to hide the nervousness in her voice. She could even feel the hidden power in Tang 13's eyes. It made her feel fear. The fusion of the ghost eye and the evil energy of the nine-headed snakelet far exceeded Gao Yuhan's expectation. 13. Tang Yuyu looked at Tang 13, his face nervous and worried. Nie Tian's face was heavy as well, worried about Tang 13's safety. Just then, Gao Yuhan seemed to have sensed something. Her expression changed and she cried out in surprise. Seeing her reaction, everyone froze and stared at Tang 13. Tang 13 was lying flat on the ground. Her eyes were closed, but her eyeballs were spinning rapidly. It was as if they weren't eyeballs anymore, but two terrifying whirlpools. Such power! Nie Tian sensed the terrifying power surging in Tang 13's eyes. His expression changed and he screamed inwardly. Gao Yuhan's eyes were shaking as well. She wasn't sure what would happen next. Right now, everyone's nerves were taut and their hearts were in their throat. After a while, Tang 13's eyeballs stopped spinning. Everyone froze. In the next second, Tang 13's eyes opened. The moment everyone saw those eyes, they all gasped. Their faces were full of shock.